Suddenly Emilia, unable to hold it in any longer, burst out laughing, driving away all his worries. As Emilia pointed at Subaru, who looked like a drowned rat, her normally neatly arranged expression was gripped by mirth. The unexpected reaction made Subaru look at Puck, who was floating right beside his face.
Well, my initial bad impression's all gone. Thanks for the assist, Dad.
In response to Subaru's impudent suggestion, Puck puffed out his chest haughtily.
Who are you calling Dad? You won't have my daughter that easily.
Upon hearing this, Emilia's loud, laughing voice filled the whole garden. Having finished her laughter, Emilia was watching Subaru as she spoke.
I heard Ram and Rem were heading for the garden, but they're a little late.
Emilia was still wiping the vestiges of the tears from her eyes from laughing so hard. Subaru, the chief culprit, toyed with Puck in the middle of his hand.
Huh. So when you say they're late, can I take it that you've been waiting here for my sake?
Isn't it the other way around? It's true that I should thank you, and if I moved without thinking, we might miss each other and I don't want that, but it's just coincidence that I stayed here with you. Right, it's just coincidence, Subaru. She makes me drag out my grooming for one reason after another and speaks to the lesser spirits about the same things over and over. She says it's all just coincidence.
As usual, just as Emilia was in the middle of completely self-destructing, Puck added fuel to the fire.
Shh, Puck. She should just be honest with herself. That's a cute thing about Leah, though. Don't you think, Subaru?
Oh, definitely. Everything about Emilia Tan is the brightest star in my sky.
Now, Subaru's teasing me. And what is that tan? Where did that come from?
She was finally voicing some doubts about the way he was speaking to her. Up until last time, it was a subject Emilia had managed to let slide. Subaru put a hand to his chin and made what sounded like some kind of diabolical chuckle.
It's a sign of my affection. It's like how Puck calls you Leah. A way for two people to show how close they are to each other.
Not that I remember being quite that close to you.
Wow, that statement kind of hurts, you know. I was kind of making a down payment. I'm totally planning to have a relationship with Emilia Tan that goes hand in hand with the pet names, okay? At the very least, he hoped to get close enough to her by a few nights from then that she'd forgive him for it.
Emilia's face expressed surprise at Subaru's strong approach, then her cheeks reddened a bit.
Fine. I'll accept that. Hey, don't look at me like that.
I thought I was getting brushed off? What's that positive reaction? Explain this, Mr. Puck.
As Emilia turned her face aside, Puck sat on her shoulder and twirled his mustache.
My daughter doesn't have many friends, so being called by an intimate nickname makes her happy. Put simply, she's easy.
My leading lady's easy. He thought he'd merely climbed a treacherous wall, but he felt the sudden realization that it was more. He continued, but we're still a long way apart. I need to learn a little more about this whole nobility thing.
Could you not mention something I really don't want to talk about?
I just want to reach an agreement on EMP Emilia Tan's Majorly Pretty. Oh?
Subaru pressed silliness onto Emilia when he abruptly looked back at the mansion and narrowed his eyes. Emilia followed Subaru's gaze, tilting her head as she watched the twins come out of the mansion.
Ram and Rem, huh? It's a bit too soon to be breakfast time, though.
The image of the sunlight reflecting off her silver hair seemed to burn into Subaru's eyes as he confirmed that events were proceeding. It was the time of Roswaal's return.
The twins simultaneously bowed their heads before them. They spoke with the same stereo effect he'd now heard many times over.
Master Roswaal, Lord of the Manor, has returned. Please come with us. Master Roswaal? Lord of the Manor has returned. Please come with us.
Subaru watched Emilia nod to them as he turned toward the twins with a hand casually pressed to his rear.
Sister, since last we saw him, he has become a muddy, drowned rat.
Rem, since last we saw him, our guest has become a stained, filthy rag.
Subaru made a pained smile at their sharp comments as he looked up at the sight of the mansion. He would change clothes, tidy himself up, and head to meet Roswaal for a fresh start.
Because this time, he intended to take a completely different approach than before, and so his first week at Roswaal Manor began in earnest for the third time.
For this third loop, Subaru wanted to emphasize gathering information. My keywords are magic and chain, but that doesn't tell me anything yet. The only thing he knew for sure was that someone would attack in the dead of night on the 4th day. Under the present circumstances, if he told Roswaal and the others, they'd no doubt ignore him. Subaru simply couldn't explain where he got his information. Subaru could even get himself suspected as one of the assassins arrayed against them. If he at least had a physical description of the attacker, things might be different. But that's why I've got to spend this time gathering intel. If the return by death conditions are the same as before. On the Royal Capital loop, he died 3 times and had a breakthrough on the 4th. If things were as before, he'd be able to return 1 more time. So this time he'd gather the intel he needed for a breakthrough the 4th time around. To be honest, I don't like picking a plan that's giving up from the start, disbinning up from the start. However, his options being very limited, he had to resign himself to some sacrifices. At any rate, he had no intention of throwing away his opportunity. It was the difference between resolving to redo everything and aiming from the start to overcome the challenge. This time he'd focus entirely on getting out of the loop. For that, I had to tell Puck under the table to keep Emilia safe. In the middle of playing around with Puck in the garden, Subaru had whispered to Puck to pay attention to Emilia's surroundings. The little kitty could read minds. Subaru figured he'd know Subaru's earnestness was no lie. I made things pretty vague, but he seems genuinely protective of Leah. After all, he'd given Subaru's pushy suggestion a warm reception. He could now assume that Emilia would be relatively safe. It wasn't much, but it did relieve a bit of the burden on his shoulders. After that, there's Roswaal and the lowly. But after that, what? Subaru scratched his head all over, plucked out a hair, pinched his feather pen under his nose, and stretched his back. His head hurt from the difficult dilemmas. That being said, he had to do whatever he could. If possible, he wanted Ram and Rem, and of course Roswaal and Beatrice as well, to get through those 4 days safely. He had his reasons for not running no matter how formidable the challenge. My concentration just ain't cutting it. What to do, huh?
As he leaned back against his chair, it made a creaking sound when he heard a voice from outside.
Pardon me, dear guest.
Faster than Subaru could reply. The door opened and he saw a pink-haired maid, Ram. Subaru raised an eyebrow as Ram came in with a steaming cup sitting on a tray in her hands.
Oh my, dear guest, you really are studying.
That's super rude, you know. I am kind of an actual guest at the moment.
Dear guest, you are the manner of house guest known as a freeloader.
Looking calm and composed, Ram let herself into the room and began serving tea. Watching from the side as she worked, Subaru could not conceal his bitter smile at her words. A house guest and freeloader. He thought the terms fit all too well.
Here you go, dear guest.
Oh, thanks. Hot, hot, hot.
When he took the cup and looked down into it, he saw steam rising from the surface of the hot amber liquid. The tea of this world was nearest to black tea in appearance and taste. The rich aroma was just as easy to enjoy. Ram's attitude was very blunt, but it was odd that she'd come in to serve tea like this. As he watched Ram's polished movements, Subaru slowly tasted the tea he'd been offered, nodding.
Really does taste awful.
This manor serves tea using leaves of the highest quality, so that is quite a statement.
If it tastes bad, it tastes bad. I just can't think of it as anything but black tea. Tastes like plant.
Ram coldly watched Subaru's scowling face as she served herself tea that she had brought like it was the most normal thing in the world, sitting down on the bed and stretching her legs without a care.
I don't have words for the guts you have slacking off in front of a guest.
I believe you were the one who said to take it easier, dear guest. I am doing this only to respond to your request. You should be thanking me.
This is, like, even pushier than you were before, though?
Subaru voiced his complaints as he sank back in his chair and made a loud sound. Ram listened to that sound as she wet her tongue with black tea, finally giving Subaru a sideways glance.
And, dear guest, leaving in 2 days, have you made any progress?
Subaru broke out in a small, bitter smile as he listened to her exceptionally dry delivery.
It was already the 2nd night since he had begun the 3rd loop. For this 3rd time around, Subaru had been treated at the mansion like a guest, a sharp difference from before. That was because Subaru had requested as much at that first breakfast. Now that he was being treated as a guest, Subaru had his own room, and Ram took turns serving him as he continued the language study he'd begun the last time. All of it was to justify his leaving the mansion temporarily without creating a stir. He was forming plans in his head while his fingers continued copying iScript almost automatically. His movements were robotic enough to make one's stomach twist, but nothing was really getting into his head.
Are you always this bad? Or is your foolish head unable to concentrate?
Got some nerve saying that to a literary enthusiast like me. Aren't you inspired from watching me give this desk my all back there?
An uncouth statement to match such sloppy writing. I am aghast you call yourself a literary enthusiast, dear guest.
This is the first time I've seen a maid talk to her guests like you do.
Ram politely ignored Subaru's resentful statement and browsed with apparent interest the pages filled with characters. Even with the distance so close, he glared as he watched the side of her face, unable to stop the feeling that his insides were being wrung. Unlike the previous occasions when Subaru had been treated as a servant, he'd had little contact with Ram this time around. Beyond his time spent in pursuit of Emilia, he'd mainly stayed in his room writing characters like this. Though once in a while he spared some time to go tease Beatrice a little, so the distance between Ram and Rem and himself felt far greater than when he was treated as a servant. In spite of that, here was Ram visiting Subaru in his room, spending time with him and speaking to him like a very blunt friend. He couldn't help but find it strange.
If you do not stop staring at me like that, I shall slap you, dear guest.
Hey, the only one making the inside of my head go pink is Emilia. Oh, that's right.
Trying to deflect his unease as he averted his eyes, he set aside the tea and picked up a book with its back cover facing up. This was the picture book he was using as learning material. He was finally able to understand the characters in it.
In other words, I want to make all this studying feel like it got me somewhere.
It contains only common stories you should be ashamed not to know. You need to master basic iScript before calling yourself a literary enthusiast.
Does calling myself that tick you off that much?
Ram made no reply to Subaru's question as she poured the remaining contents of her cup down her throat. She then reached for Subaru's cup.
Wait, you're gonna drink all the tea you brought here?
You do not need it if you are making a face like that when you drink it. At least it shall be enjoyed by someone with a properly functioning tongue.
I told you I just can't get that plant taste out of my cup. Oh, never mind. I'm gonna focus on this book so you can kill time or head off whatever you want.
Subaru made a brusque wave before leaning forward in his chair and opening the picture book. First came the author's preface and the table of contents. After that came the body, written in the characters he'd now grown accustomed to.
Let's see. A long, long time ago. So fairy tales start the same way in every world, huh? He accepted with strange ease as he continued reading the story. The fact that it was in a picture book meant the story was exceptionally concise with a clearly defined introduction, body, and conclusion. Child-level comprehension was prioritized, with pictures used precisely where there was room for imagination. Incidentally, if one asked Subaru which fairy tale he liked best, he would reply, The Crying Red Demon. If one asked Subaru which fairy tale he hated most, he would reply, The Crying Red Demon. It's like a happy ending and a bitter ending slamming into you at once. Why can't it all be happily ever after?
Sorry to intrude on your deep thoughts, but are you finished reading?
I'm finished reading. The things that went against common sense were fun, so it was more interesting than I expected. Guess that's another world's culture for you. Maybe I should bring in fairy tales from my own homeland, too, like The Crying Red Demon.
The Crying Red Demon?
Subaru was mumbling about the copyright issues in another world's jurisdiction when Ram's eyebrows trembled in response. Went Subaru getting a rare rise out of Ram?
It's the title of a fairy tale from where I come from. How about I tell it to you?
Ram did not reply as Subaru made the suggestion with a thumbs up. However, the way she sat on the bed with her hands on her knees, shifting her gaze to Subaru, clearly conveyed that he should get on with it.
All right, attention please. The Crying Red Demon. A long, long time ago, in a certain land, there was...
The fairy tale began with a bitter argument. The Crying Red Demon was a tale of friendship between the Red Demon, which wanted to become friends with humans, and his best friend, the Blue Demon. And what came between them? It went something like this. The two demons living on the mountain tried various things to get the Red Demon in the good graces of the villagers, culminating in the Blue Demon committing wicked deeds upon the village, only to be driven off by the Red Demon, who thus befriended the human beings. The tale ended with the Blue Demon leaving. The Red Demon, dispirited at the Blue Demon's display of friendship, cried for the Blue Demon's sake.
And so, the red demon read over and over the letter left at the blue demon's house and cried, the end.
Subaru finished conveying to Ram a somewhat abridged version of the fairy tale. It was a fairy tale Subaru himself had read many times over. He thought he was as faithful with his words as possible, keeping his own opinions out of it. Ram lowered her eyes as she listened to the tale. Subaru stayed in the same position as when he'd finished the story, waiting for her to speak. Finally, Ram let out a small sigh.
A rather sad tale.
I suppose so, but I think it's a happy story too.
I think the cast of characters was full of idiots. The red demon, the blue demon, and the villagers too.
Well, that's being a tough critic. Not that you'll get any argument from me. He agreed that none of the three sides had enough introspection. The villagers were pure suckers, and if the two demons had spoken more to each other, they might have found proper common ground. At the very least, surely they could have avoided the need for one to put distance between him and the other for the rest of their lives. That's why I love this story and hate this story. The blue demon's self-sacrifice was super cool, but he was an idiot beyond saving too. I like to think I can save myself through putting in the effort.
So you think that about the blue demon? I think it is the red demon who is beyond saving.
Ram's reply made Subaru lift his head. Ram was looking at Subaru as she bit her tongue.
He wrapped the blue demon in his own desires, losing nothing when the blue demon lost everything. I think that is a rather horrible result.
What do you think the two demons should have done then?
If the red demon truly wanted to be friends with the humans, he should have gone to live in the village, even if it meant cutting off his horn. He should have done that long before the blue demon left.
Man, that's a pretty extreme position there.
Subaru raised his voice at the radical view she'd provided, but Ram simply stroked her own short hair like she was saying, "Is it now?" She proceeded to toy with the ribbon holding her hair in place.
Making the blue demon pay for something he wants is unforgivable. If the red demon wants it, the red demon should pay the price. The blue demon robbing him of that chance is a problem too.
That's a really strict view of it. Do you have something against demons?
Dear guest, which of the two demons would you rather befriend?
Subaru blinked at Ram's question. He hadn't really thought about it.
Which of the two?
Ram nodded and stretched out both hands toward Subaru, raising one finger from each.
On the one hand, the red demon who asks and leaves others to pay the consequences, or the blue demon, the idiot drowning in his own martyrdom. Which?
Geez, you make both of those choices feel bad. So what, I'm a villager who just arrived here?
It was rather rare for the point of view of the villagers to come up in a discussion about the crying red demon. Either way, Subaru was a little lost as he stared at the two hands Ram presented before him when she said, "What an uninteresting reply."
Don't say that. Since I've read The Crying Red Demon, I sympathize with the two of them, so I want to help out both, okay?
Subaru gently pressed both his hands onto both of Ram's hands. Subaru's reply drew a long sigh out of Ram. She glared at Subaru, who of course was close enough to touch.
So, you're the type who understands neither his position nor that of others. When distance grows, your type gets left behind by both.
Distance, huh? Why not just tell people how you feel while they're still close? The red demon's not a bad guy for wanting to get along, and the blue demon's not a bad guy for wanting to help him either. I'm the type who likes demons, not the type to just drive them off the island at the drop of a hat.
Ram sighed at the grinning Subaru and looked at her own two hands as he grasped her raised fingers. As she brushed him off, Subaru shrugged and sat back in his seat, readjusting himself to face Ram again.
You know, Ram, you seem to like the crying red demon quite a bit.
Dear guest, you will someday regret fickle, indecisive thoughts such as wanting to be friends with both.
I don't remember that being what we were talking about here. I thought we were talking about demons?
As Subaru shouted and shook his head, Ram made a small clap of her hands to indicate the subject was closed. Her quick-tempered behavior tugged at him, but Ram pointed to the book on the desk before he could say a word.
Setting aside the tales from our dear guest homeland, what did you think of the stories of this land?
Let's see. I suppose the one that stood out was the dragon one in the middle of the book and the witch one at the end. No matter how I slice it, those two are different somehow.
Subaru gave a wandering reply as he browsed the book. Those were the two tales that had left the deepest impression upon him. The former definitely got special treatment. As for the latter,
The witch story was like, they felt they had to put it in, but they went halfway. It completely ignored story structure, like a bunch of highlights.
That cannot be helped. We are in Lugunica. Of course the dragon story gets special treatment.
Subaru nodded as he flipped the pages of the picture book on the desk.
Right, Dragon Friend Kingdom of Lugunica, right? Now I get why it's called that.
Apparently the large kingdom Subaru was staying in was called the Dragon Friend Kingdom of Lugunica. On world maps, it looked like the easternmost nation in the world, but apparently it had good reason to be called the Dragon Friend Kingdom. It was a simple tale, really. Long ago, the kingdom had come under the protection of a dragon, forming a pact.
The dragon is said to have lent its power to Lugunica, protecting it in times of famine, plague, war with other nations, and other various predicaments.
So that's why they call it Dragon Friend, huh? It did say in the picture book that the royal family made a pact with the dragon. This is less of a fairy tale than ancient history, right?
I suppose so. It's a true story after all. Even now, the dragon protects the peace of this land from under a great waterfall far away, until the day its promise to the royal family comes to an end.
Subaru cleared his throat as he listened to the oh-so-strict Ram speak such words. A promise made with the dragon in ancient times. The picture book had not drawn the details, but it was a big enough deal that the kingdom had been saved from crisis many times over.
Thinking of that, Subaru suddenly realized something about the royal family that had made the pact with the dragon. Hey, the family that made the promise with the dragon, didn't it just die out?
It did, and suddenly at that.
Isn't that like bad? Or not that I know what bad means here. No doubt the dragon had been promised something considerable in return for protecting its promise all that time. Yet with the royal family that would be granting it dying off on him like that, who would honor that obligation?
No one knows what the dragon seeks, so it was not put in the picture book. Only gods know what the dragon will do in this situation.
At that point, Ram paused for a moment.
Rather, dear guest, only the dragon knows.
Subaru's breath caught. He wasn't warm, but he felt sweat on his brow regardless. He chewed over Ram's words, swallowed them, and breathed in and out hard enough to make his stomach churn.
Negotiating with the mighty dragon was the responsibility of the ruler of the kingdom. In other words, that has to be a mountain of pressure on Emilia, then...
Yes, the dragon can protect the kingdom or destroy it on a whim. Thus, the kingdom and its destiny rest upon Emilia's shoulders. Just thinking about it makes it seem like a story from that picture book.
There'd been a conflicted look on Emilia's face when she saw the picture book on the last night of the previous loop. Now Subaru understood why Emilia's hand had stopped when she was flipping the pages.
The size and weight of Emilia's burden had far surpassed Subaru's expectations. His mind wanted to cry out just from thinking about the heavy responsibility borne by those delicate shoulders.
It cannot be helped.
Ah!
Everyone was born with a role to play and the responsibility to live up to it. This is what Lady Emilia was born to do. It is a path she must walk, no matter how treacherous it may be.
Subaru's voice was shaking with anger from a source he couldn't place.
One girl's supposed to shoulder the whole burden like that?
For her part, Ram's voice was cold and logical.
I believe it is best if others can carry it with her. However, sooner or later, Lady Emilia must be seen to climb that summit herself.
Subaru slumped his shoulders when he realized Ram was holding back to not fuel his anger further. He could vent at Ram all he wanted, but he'd be mistaken. Ram wasn't responsible for the weight of Emilia's burden. At any rate, Subaru had no right to be angry. That part really burned him.
Oh, right. Ram! About that other story.
Wanting to do something other than apologize, Subaru changed the subject and pointed at the picture book. Contrary to how the story of the dragon in the center of the book had received special treatment, the story of the witch had only a few pages drawn for it at the very back of the book. The story was titled, The Witch of Jealousy.
So this witch story...
I do not wish to speak of it.
Just like that, she seemed to verbally cut things off after the story of the dragon. Subaru opened his eyes wide without thinking as Ram briskly got up, tray and cups in hand.
I have been here too long. I do not wish to cause Ram too much trouble. Dear guest, I shall call you again for dinner time.
Right.
Ram, turning her back like she would brook no argument, immediately headed out of the room. But just before her hand reached the door, Ram stopped and looked back at Subaru, left in her dust.
About the demon story from earlier.
Right. The crying red demon. What of it?
Don't tell Rem that story. She would probably find it distasteful.
Surely no one would have that kind of reaction over a simple fairy tale. Regardless, Subaru, feeling overwhelming pressure from Ram's words, could only nod meekly in response. Seeing this, Ram finally left. Subaru, feeling drained, flopped onto the bed.
It felt like there was something more to Ram's last action than just banning him from telling Rem a fairy tale. What the heck's up with all that?
Venting at the ceiling, Subaru picked up the picture book and flipped through the pages. The final chapter, The Witch of Jealousy, was a short tale only 4 pages long.
A scary witch, a frightening witch. It is terrifying to just speak her name. That was why everyone called her the Jealous Witch. There was no story structure, just contents, conveying the raw terror of the witch. It was straight up eerie, doubly so when written in characters meant for small children. And after all the trouble of studying to read this thing, his feelings of success, satisfaction, and the glow of having just read a book seemed to fall by the wayside.
Subaru turned in bed and switched his head to a different subject, thinking of what he could do for the remaining 2 days of that loop. He put his preparations for the last day in order and shifted to what he'd do 2 mornings hence. Subaru squished his countless worries one by one until he finally fell asleep.
My time here's been brief, but thanks for taking care of me.
In the mansion's entry hall, all the human beings in the mansion, meaning only 4 people, with Beatrice not included, were seeing Subaru off as he made his goodbyes. Subaru had asked that he be allowed to stay for 3 days. That time had passed. That morning, he would journey onward. Subaru wore his tracksuit and carried the convenience store bag containing his starting equipment, but he also carried a knapsack over his back that Roswaal had generously provided. The knapsack was fairly heavy from a decent sum of coinage. Roswaal explained simply,
My thanks for taking care of Lady Emilia.
Among those seeing Subaru off, Emilia called out to him, a look of deep concern on her face even then. Subaru, grateful for Emilia's feelings, vividly thumped his chest.
I'll be fine. I'm just gonna take it easy. When I become a strong, wise, and rich man suitable for you, I'll come riding back on a white horse.
You have your handkerchief. And drinking water. Lagmite ore. And
She's totally acting like she's my mom? Emilia fussed about this and that. The way she asked last, "Can you sleep all by yourself?" made Subaru wonder just how much she longed for the company of others. Or perhaps she was acting on instinct, voicing the unease Subaru was desperately shoving down inside him.
Roswaal came to shake his hand.
We'll then be in good health, Subaru. It has been a short time, but it was quite enjoyable. Do not be concerned about my parting gift. Consider it a small reward for the memories you created these last 3 days.
Roswaal added a wink to the last part. Subaru could guess what he meant. The knapsack over his back was jingling just from their shaking hands.
I get it. You're paying me to keep my mouth shut. I won't say anything. I swear on the dragon.
It will keep others from approaching you as part of some wicked scheme. Besides, in this nation, to swear upon the dragon is to make the highest of oaths. It is not that I doubt you, but strive not to forget that.
Subaru raised a hand in response to Roswaal's reminder. He then turned to the twins, standing behind the clown-faced nobleman. The two stood silently as Subaru reached and patted them both on the shoulder.
You two were a huge help, especially Rem, with those really delicious meals. Rem, well, she cleans toilets really well.
Sister, the dear guest's flattery is despairingly awkward.
Rem. The dear guest's flattery is a complete disaster.
Well, excuse me, I really couldn't think of anything else, but thanks.
Having said his goodbyes to everyone, he pushed open the front doors before he got cold feet. From the entrance of the manor, he cut through the garden, passed through the metal gate, and continued onto the forest path that was a straight shot to Orem village. Subaru's stated plan was to head from there to the nearest highway, hire a passing carriage, and head to the capital. But that plan was a feint.
Subaru, thanks for everything. If anything happens, come back anytime. Okay?
With Emilia's statement of farewell, her words gentle until the bitter end, Subaru departed, walking the path toward Orem village. The silver-haired girl waved until she could no longer see Subaru from the mansion, Her oh-so adorable behavior dulled his worries and made his sense of duty burn once more.
After heading down the path to the village for a while, Subaru stopped and cautiously looked around the area. When he was sure no one was around to watch him, he left the path and dove into the woods. He did so regardless of Ram's and the others' admonitions that this was dangerous due to the many wild animals within. Ignoring their warnings, Subaru pushed his way through the foliage as he headed deeper into the forest. At some point, he ascended a slope, not slowing his pace when branches and briar patches scratched him.
He proceeded up the mountain like that for about 15 minutes.
Okay, I'll do it here.
Subaru left the greenery, the soaring sky greeting his vision. Subaru had cleared the forested slopes, arriving at a foothill nestled among the mountains. He could watch the mansion below from the cliff right in front of him. From there, he could observe the familiar luxurious sights of Roswaal Manor. He'd circled around from the forest path and cut through forest and mountain to arrive at the perfect observation point.
It has an especially good view of Emilia's room. I'll see anything weird happening right away.
He could make out the window to Emilia's room even at a distance. He couldn't see inside, but it was a good spot for watching for any signs of trouble. And on the night of the fourth day, trouble would surely come.
In other words, tonight, all that's left is to wait for something to happen. From that morning, Subaru had about 16 hours to kill. Surely he could hold his concentration that long. This way, he could figure out what would happen at Roswaal Manor beforehand and rush back to the manor immediately. This time, Subaru would have the element of surprise on his side. If he'd remained at the mansion, Subaru would be one more victim of the attacker's curse. With limited means of counterattack and low overall combat ability, Subaru couldn't take on the attacker straight up. He desperately needed any shred of information he could get on the assassin. So, what to do? Subaru had come up with a simple answer. This time, my goal is to identify the attacker and nail down the details of the attack, even if it kills me. Having died twice so far, Subaru had determined that the attack was an assassination having to do with the royal succession. He didn't know if he'd been collateral damage with Emilia as the main target or if he'd been killed as some kind of message to her. But having been murdered twice already, Subaru considered it highly likely everyone close to her was being slaughtered. Putting aside if countermeasures will work, seems like Roswaal has his guard up anyway. Subaru based that on the premise that Roswaal, the nobleman with a scheming mind behind his clown face, was not such a fool as to leave his king piece, bearing the name of Emilia, defenseless on the chessboard. The existence of Ram and Rem, the two servants he'd left behind at the mansion, was further evidence. To be honest, at first I thought it was nuts to have just two maids taking care of a huge mansion like that, but they were lord and vassal, their mutual trust rock solid, bonds of loyalty formed through long service. Seeing Ram's slavish devotion and Rem's adoration of her had told him that much. Roswaal had surely surrounded Emilia with people who would never betray him. The fact that one maid had retired several months before, yet, according to Ram, no replacement would be hired, assured him Emilia would be protected. The problem is, I don't know if they're on guard enough given that I died from the attack already. If I'm the only one who died, well, good. Wait, that's not good. If Roswaal's defense plans simply didn't account for Subaru, a wild card, then all was well and good. If it wasn't so, that meant Emilia would come to harm as well. And Subaru, having died 3 times at the capital and 2 at the manor, was accustomed by now to reality foiling the best of plans. You needed to expect the worst case and then expect worse than that. Here, the worst case is that Roswaal's guard is down and Emilia gets assassinated. Of course, that means Roswaal Rem, and then Beatrice gets slaughtered too. Damn it. Just picturing the worst-case scenario filled him with disgust. Though it was to stop all that, he wanted to vent at his entirely logical decision to watch events unfold from the outside. Of course, Subaru, who wore his heart on his sleeve, planned to stay on guard the whole time, ready to instantly rush back to the manor if anything happened, running around and warding of the enemy attack, but, well, it'd be nice if the guy's super cautious and runs off just from my yelling at him, right?
Subaru voiced the optimistic view as he pulled a rope out of his knapsack. It was a rather long rope he'd borrowed from the manor's warehouse. Subaru firmly tied one end around the trunk of a nearby tree and the other around his own waist. He used complex knots along the way, as if his life depended on it. Which it kind of did.
And last, the knife to cut the rope. She'd probably be ticked off if she knew I was using it like this.
As he spoke, he took out the knife that he'd lovingly dubbed Shooting Star. In the present loop, he'd been in a position to lay his hands on it for the first time only that day.
I used it a whole bunch during the 4 days of the other loops, though. During his time doing odd jobs as a servant, Subaru's kitchen duties mainly involved peeling vegetables and washing tableware. Shooting Star was the beloved blade that Subaru had used to cut potato-like veggies, apples, and, from time to time, his own hand. When this time he'd come up with a plan that required a knife, he grabbed that one without a second thought. Hopefully just for cutting the rope, but if worse comes to worst, the knife was not only to facilitate his escape, but to wound himself at the time came, for surely stimulation from the pain of self-harm would make him able to resist the gnawing sleepiness of the curse. If worse came to worst, he might have to turn that blade upon the enemy. And if it was worse than that, for suicide, huh? Geez, can I do that? Something that's scary.
Subaru looked at himself reflected in the blade's edge as a laugh at his own expense came over him.
As he looked at the blade in his hand, memories of Ram and Rim.
Ram had insulted Subaru for his clumsy knife work. Ram had shot him shocked sideways glances when he'd cut his own hand with a knife. They angrily shouted things like, "Do not cut what you are not supposed to." They'd be angry with me for misusing it like this too, wouldn't they? He could totally picture in his mind both girls angry with him, with Ram glaring down at him and Rem looking aghast. Ah, that scene was just... They'd be totally pissed. Huh. I hope they would be... The longing words leaked out from his lips. One way or another, he truly wanted to bury himself in that day-to-day life again. I don't want to die. I don't want to let them die. Subaru said it for his own benefit as he remembered the faces of the people he'd only just said goodbye to. Subaru had cast away Emilia and the others to prepare for the next loop. Yet this time, just like the last times, he'd formed definite bonds with the girls. He suppressed his throbbing chest. This was his punishment, the natural price to pay for what he had done. It was a cross to bear that Subaru, having formed a plan premised on losing something, could not shirk. He had to carry both the sweet and the bitter thoughts with him. Subaru had spent those thrown away 4 days prying open that raw wound, enduring pain like that of having his flesh gouged and his bones broken, also that he would remember it. You said it yourself, Subaru Natsuki. Even if everyone else forgets, you'll remember. That was why he couldn't think of this time as something he could forget. Subaru had to continue to crave a happy ending until the last possible moment. No one had the right to decide that Emilia and the others were no more than bubbles on the edge of the time stream.
Subaru kept hidden among the trees as he observed Roswaal Manor. The resolve permeating his presumably stressed body quieted his breathing and lowered his heart rate. He felt like his body was acting in accordance to his will in a way it never had before, trusting his body to that hard-earned feeling. Subaru stayed put and waited for time to pass. As evening drew near, the setting sun bathed the hill Subaru was on in an orange light. Squinting from the sun's rays, Subaru moved his tense body around, shaking out the cobwebs. He'd already been watching the manor for something like 8 hours. During that time, there had been no sign of anything unusual. The mansion remained entirely peaceful. So things really were fine there until night fell.
Come to think of it, Rem didn't go shopping this time. There had been no sign of the Day 4 event of Rem going shopping. Perhaps she simply didn't need to because Subaru's departure meant one less mouth to feed. It was an odd discrepancy. When Subaru realized he was smiling at the memories, his sense of tension lifting, he pinched his own cheek. This wasn't the place or time to let up on his concentration. Like, I can do something stupid like that with 8 hours to go. Concentrate. Concentra.
He stopped mid-word. For better or worse, it was at the very moment Subaru switched gears that the attack came. The instant his eardrums detected a faint sound, Subaru dove to the side without hesitation. He devoted his 5 senses to determining when to do the evasive maneuver he'd settled on beforehand. The next moment, he heard something exceptionally heavy make a smashing sound, snapping trees in two. The trees all around him, plus their leaves and branches, came down with a wild cacophony of snapping sounds. Amid all that, Subaru rushed straight for the cliff and leapt straight down. Even clenching his teeth, he couldn't stop himself from letting out a faint cry, his insides turning over from the weightless feeling of falling. But his lifeline cut that short after 2 long seconds. He let out an anguished cry from the pain of the ropes biting in. Additioned in sheer fear.
Emergency escape.
Cutting the rope with his knife, He resumed his descent, the bottoms of his shoes digging into a slanted rock face. Sliding and hitting his shoulder, Subaru landed on the ground roughly, somehow keeping his footing, and ran without pausing for breath. He tossed away the knapsack to lighten the load, breathing raggedly as he ran without a care for proper form.
I saw it! Yeah, I totally saw it! The object that had attacked Subaru by surprise and mowed down various trees was a spiked iron ball as large as a man's skull. It was basically a killer bowling ball on a really, really long chain, the weapon known as a morning star. Subaru had hit the dirt when his eardrums picked up the faint metallic sound of that horrible weapon's chain. Having witnessed its fiendish power for himself, Subaru still wasn't biting with his teeth lined up right. The way that thing had flown at him, his body probably would have been splattered if it had connected. Now Subaru could understand how half his body had been sent flying. But it came here, huh?
He stomped on branches, leapt across a gulch, and raced across areas with poor footing.
Subaru had anticipated that he might be attacked. Having distanced himself from the manor, he determined that an attack on him was just as possible as a raid on the mansion itself. If the objective was to kill anyone involved, Subaru was still on that list. But that's based on knowing I was at the mansion since days ago. That would mean the assailant had been observing the mansion for several days, drawing up plans in secret. Out of breath, he'd lost his way, focusing on not tripping as he headed down a game trail. Subaru, breathing roughly, clicked his tongue at the scene unfolding before him. So I've been totally dancing on the other guy's palm?
Dismayed, Subaru stood before a cliff that hemmed him in. Looking at the hard, jagged rock wall, it was like a natural fortress for resisting all attempts to climb. Naturally, Subaru had no way at the moment to overcome that obstacle. Subaru turned around and girded himself, taking deep, ragged breaths. The forest before him had grown darker at some point, with the trees filtering out the setting sun, making him feel cut off from the world and very, very alone.
If you're coming, bring it on!
Subaru shoved away his misgivings, opening his track jacket in front and stripping it off. He spread out the track jacket with both hands, quietly waiting for his assailant to arrive. He was being pursued. He'd been backed into a corner. That moment, Subaru felt as helpless as prey caught in a predator's trap. But he wasn't so cute and helpless that he'd let himself get eaten without a fight. He'd make the other guy earn it.
Damn it, you coming or not?
Subaru's body demonstrated uncanny reflexes toward the lethal attack before his eyes. He raised the track jacket aloft with both hands, catching the flying iron ball from below, enveloping it as he barely evaded by the skin of his teeth a ferocious strike to his body. But the top was ripped from his hands as his body smacked against the wall with an undiluted impact. But the moment Subaru lifted his eyes and saw that the iron ball, having missed its target, was stuck in the face of the cliff just as he'd hoped. He got a firm grip on the elongated chain. Then he glared down the chain he gripped in the direction of the assailant holding the other end.
Now, show yourself, bastard! I've gone through a lot of trouble to see your face.
He raised an angry shout and talked trash to lift his own spirits. Gripping the chain in one hand, he used the other to re-grip the knife he'd cut the rope with earlier. He resolved to swing it in the assailant's face if worst came to worst. If it came to that, Subaru wouldn't hesitate. His eyes hardened. He wouldn't run no matter who or what came out.
His life was in grave peril, but somehow he was still alive. Maybe he didn't have to throw away this time. Maybe it was still possible to drive off the assailant. Having already given up once, Subaru desperately reached out for any glimmer of hope. Perhaps that glimmer was Emilia. Perhaps it was the maid twins. Perhaps it was that cheeky little girl, or maybe Roswaal. Without intending to, Subaru forgot his situation, remembering the collection of memories he thought he'd shoved aside. He'd made promises. Promises he had to keep.
But then,
You leave me no choice.
he felt slack in the chain as its wielder drew closer. But Subaru didn't pick up those subtleties as his eyes opened wide. He couldn't speak. His lips quivered as a whimper came out of his throat. Unintentionally, his fingers grasping the chain let go as he made a small listless shake of his head, as if rejecting the reality before him. Walking on the grass, stepping over branches, a young girl emerged from the darkness. She was wearing a black, rather short apron dress. She wore a white lace hairpiece. She gripped a handle chained to the iron ball, thoroughly unsuited to her small stature. Her blue hair rustled in the wind as she made a familiar tilt of her head, a neutral look on her face.
You're kidding, right, Ram?
One of the girls Subaru had meant to protect was wielding the fiendish iron ball before him.
Instantly, the back of Subaru's mind was completely filled with white noise. He desperately wanted to deny the sight before his eyes, but he could think of nothing that would let him. Subaru's thoughts were white, pure white, with nothing in them whatsoever. His breathing stopped. His heart seemed to stand still, like it had forgotten to keep beating. What freed Subaru from that state was the cold feel of the drop of sweat rolling down the skin of his forehead. This is bad. Bad, 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 bad. This empty thoughts became filled over and over with violent unease and panic. No rational thoughts came. Was this truly Rem before his eyes? Was this truly the Rem Subaru knew? Her polite words sliding in like daggers, punctual to the point of obsession, doting on her impudent sister, harboring a serious inferiority complex.
With Subaru having lost his earlier will to fight, Rem looked at him as she ran her free hand through her hair.
If you do not resist, I can grant you a quick end?
You really think I'm gonna say yes? That's like telling me to eat shit.
How very rude. Yes, I suppose that is in your nature, dear guest.
Rem was behaving just like she had at the mansion, her curtsy and polite speech so thoroughly out of place that he felt like he really was seeing things. But that could not make him dismiss the brutal foreign object in Rem's hand.
I'll grant you that a girl with a blunt weapon is kinda hot, but a spiked iron ball on a chain. A blunt weapon that could turn an opponent into mincemeat with one blow. Rem had to be quite a sadist to pick a weapon like that. Subaru, having tasted its might and losing his life to it once already, knew only too well that Rem's control of the iron ball was absolute. Little by little, Subaru ground the reality down between his teeth, his mouth forming the words he was reaching for. It's kinda cliche to ask, but why are you doing this?
It is nothing complicated. You are suspicious, so I will render judgment as a maid should.
Haven't you ever heard of love thy neighbor?
I am fully committed to this. So,
Rem looked at Subaru like she expected a prompt response, apparently having no intention of letting him play for time. If he moved now, she'd kill him for sure. It was less of a stalemate than staring down the barrel of a gun. Subaru's brain spun as he desperately tried to wring a little info out of this without his anguish lowering his guard.
Does Ram know about this?
Abruptly, he invoked the name of the sister sharing Rem's face.
Ram wore 3 crowns. She was arrogant, rude, and overbearing. As a maid, she was inferior to her little sister in every respect, but Subaru had spent more time with Ram than anyone else at Roswaal Manor. If even Ram had become his enemy, what did those days they spent together mean? That was why Ram's reply was the one Subaru had sought without knowing it.
I intend to finish this before sister is aware of it.
Subaru took a deep breath and looked back straight into Rem's eyes. Rem raised her brows as she watched Subaru lick his lips as if he'd come back to life.
So you decided this on your own? Roswaal didn't order you.
I will eliminate all who oppose Master Roswaal's wishes. You are merely one.
Man, can't he train his lapdogs not to bite at people just passing through? Ugh!
Subaru taunted Rem a little to probe Rem's true feelings, only to have the chain leap in from the side.
You shall not insult Master Roswaal.
The blunt impact made his vision waver. A sharp pain conveyed the vertical cut in his left cheek. With the iron ball still stuck in the rock face, she'd smacked Subaru by using the chain as a whip. So that was the price he paid for his flippant taunt, but he'd gotten something for it.
At the very least, he could now confirm that Rem's loyalty to Roswaal was the real thing. She no doubt really believed silencing Subaru was for Roswaal's benefit. She decided that Subaru's leaving Roswaal Manor was disadvantageous for Roswaal, who was supporting Emilia's candidacy. In other words, this was... That's what it is. That's how little you trust me, huh?
Yes.
Her grudging nod made Subaru feel pain equal to a sharp blade being thrust deep into his chest. Subaru had dreaded that answer, for accepting it meant looking at his days at the manor in an entirely different light. So Subaru didn't say it. He locked that horrid feeling deep in his chest. But he couldn't help himself from laughing at his own obliviousness. Damn, just look at me! I thought I'd done all right, but I was so wrong.
My sister.
I don't want to hear it. Take this.
Rem hesitated slightly for one instant as Subaru shouted and drew his cell phone from his pocket, thrusting it before him. The next moment, a white light cut through the darkness of the forest, freezing Rem momentarily.
Rah!
Subaru screamed as he leapt in and tackled her small body, knocking her away. Rem was able to wield that violent device with unbelievable force, but in a straight-up collision, Subaru's greater height and weight won out. His charge held nothing back, sending her small body flying. She lost her balance and stumbled to the ground. Subaru's didn't spend even a moment to look at her as he rushed past.
He wheezed as he shoved air into his lungs and thought as he ran. If this was Rem's decision alone, Subaru had two options for survival. One surely was to return to the manor and speak directly to her master. But if Roswaal thought the same way Rem did, he'd simply be going from the frying pan into the fire. But even so, there's Emilia. His memory of her shone brighter than that of any other. If he could trust anyone, it was her. But would she, a royal candidate, trust Subaru's words when she had the most to lose from doing so? Instantly, the voice from the back of Subaru's head struck him with the force of a thunderbolt. Without any doubt, it had been his voice that doubted Emilia's heart. It was Subaru himself who had doubted her, knowing how she was forthright, earnest, and unhesitant to put herself in harm's way for others.
Why am I doing?
His standpoint had changed, and so had his thoughts. But to doubt Emilia, if Subaru couldn't even trust the person he'd resolved to protect, who could he believe in? He was pathetically fleeing through the mountains because of the big plan he'd formed to protect the life of someone whose heart he doubted. How sane was that? He'd gather intel this time? Yeah, right. Why was he here, under threat from a completely unexpected direction, running for his life like this? He'd been too proud. He'd been naive. He hadn't thought it through.
His breath ragged, half running and half falling down a slope, Subaru was awash in regrets. He whined as tears clouded his vision. His steps grew clumsy. Suddenly, the trees opened wide into a clearing. Subaru saw that night was creeping across the sky. Then, a blade of extremely concentrated wind lashed out, slicing off Subaru's right leg at the knee, sending it flying away. Subaru watched his right foot leap and bounce with great force as he lost his balance, slamming into the ground. The impact made the cut on his cheek bleed again. His shoulder bone sounded like it had exploded as it rammed into the rock. Subaru screamed, the cut across his whole body jabbing into his brain like an electric shock.
AR! In my league?
It didn't hurt, and that felt scarier. Pieces of his lost lower leg were blown off, sailing into the thickets ahead. A delayed gush of fresh blood dyed the ground reddish-black. Only then did the pain invade his nervous system in earnest. He clawed at the ground as unspeakable pain rippled through him. He pressed down on the wound, thrashed his body, pounded his free right hand against the ground, smacked a tree, and clawed at the bark as his consciousness boiled from the heat. It hurt. It hurt. It really hurt. He felt the pain shaving away his nerves as if a carpenter's plane were whittling him from the inside out. Having lost so much blood so quickly, it gradually dawned on him that he was dying.
Man of water, grant thy healing.
A soft palm abruptly pressed down on Subaru's thrashing body. Unable to move, Subaru shifted his bloodshot eyes and noticed the girl in the maid outfit at his side. It was the blue-haired Rem. Rem, who had tried to kill Subaru just now, enveloped her palm in a pale light, pouring warm magical energy onto Subaru's amputated right leg. He felt the itch of healing magic. The pain didn't vanish completely, but shock seized Subaru at the surreal scene. Subaru didn't know why Rem was healing him at a time like this. Sensing Subaru's gaze, she gave him a soft, casual smile. What seemed like a tiny ray of hope died with the words that followed.
I will not be able to ask you anything if I let you die so easily.
It truly sank in what an optimistic idiot he was.
Rem stood up as she finished her first aid, making a sound with her chain as she pulled along the iron ball. Subaru was lying face up with the iron ball gouging the earth as it neared him. The closer he saw it, the clearer it looked like the crude, unrefined, specialized tool for violence that it was, existing only to take life. Rem had deliberately brought it where he could see. Her intentions were crystal clear. It was the easiest way for her to demonstrate that his life was in her hands.
I am confiscating this.
Rem spoke as she crouched and opened up Subaru's firmly closed hand. His hand had been locked around the knife since his encounter with Rem, unable to let go. Rem roughly pried open his fingers and took the knife, turning it around in her hand.
Had you stabbed me with this earlier, you would have been able to flee a little farther.
Rem knitted her brows, speaking like she couldn't comprehend Subaru's illogical act. But Subaru, suppressing his breathing amid the throbbing pain, shook his head.
There was no way he could have stabbed Rem with that knife. That knife had been the implement in his hands when he'd spent such busy and gentle times with Rem's back to him as Ram taught him how to peel vegetables. He couldn't stab Rem with that. Subaru's heart lacked the strength for that.
As Subaru continued shaking his head without a word, Rem sighed and discarded the knife into the forest thicket. She seemed to refocus her attention as she made the chain clank and coldly looked down at Subaru.
I ask you, are you working with one of Lady Emilia's rival claimants to the throne?
My heart belongs to Emilia.
The moment he spoke, the chain ferociously lashed Subaru's upper body. His shirt, scratched all over during his flight, easily tore open, as did the skin underneath. Subaru's scream echoed through the forest.
Who hired you? And on what terms?
Emilia Tan's smiling face is priceless.
She moved her wrist the other way and did the same thing again. Feeling like she'd lashed him in precisely the same place, he knew his anguished cry served as praise for her skill. She asked more questions like that. He made more replies like that. Several times more the chain rang out. Several times more Subaru's painful cries matched it. When his consciousness faded, Rem treated him with healing magic. Trapped in a hell of repeated healing and violence, Subaru's spirit frayed. He lost consciousness several times like that. Yet his heart did not submit to Remsi, yet Trap did not submit to Remsi Rai Prizemore. Rem must have felt tired of Subaru's obstinate attitude when she wiped the blood spatter off her face and looked up at the sky.
If I do not get back soon, I will be late preparing the meal.
Dinner, huh? What's on the menu today, huh?
Let's see. How about mincemeat pie?
Sorry, I think I'll have to skip it.
Rem finally showed some sign of emotion as she sighed at Subaru's behavior, flippant to the bitter end. After that, she fell silent for a while before looking down at Subaru, her eyes colder than ever before as she interrogated him.
Are you a member of the witch cult?
Subaru knit his brow, perplexed at having vocabulary he'd never heard before thrown at him. He didn't know what those words meant in regards to the place, the circumstances, or Rem's real thoughts.
Answer, please. You are one of the bewitched, yes?
Be what?
Do not play games with me.
Agitated, Rem's pale blue eyes shot daggers through Subaru in a rage. It was literally the first time Subaru had seen Rem worked up like this since they'd met. Rem's pale face glowered as she looked down at Subaru with pure hostility.
I don't know them. My whole family's atheist to begin with.
Still denying it? It is plain you are involved with the witch. Her stench is all over you.
Hatred. Rem's eyes seethed with dark hatred as they glared at Subaru. Subaru's eyes widened, feeling like this part of Rem, this vortex of emotion, put every single thing she'd done in a completely new light.
Even if sister or no one else notices, I can smell it on you. The leftover stench of that monster makes me want to spit in disgust.
Subaru fell silent. Rem, standing before him, bit her lip so hard that she seemed to be grinding her teeth.
I was anxious and angry when I saw you speaking with sister. You, someone involved with the one who put sister through so much, weaseling into our precious home.
Her words of undiluted malice mercilessly bathed Subaru in bitterness.
I have been watching you since Master Roswaal welcomed you, but the entire time it hurt to watch you. I could not bear it.
Subaru had been unable to say a word. Then, Rem drove the dagger home.
Even if I knew that the whole time sister was taking care of you, she was just pretending to be friendly.
Rem seemed to be making up for her seemingly inadequate emotions by slamming all her bottled-up resentment at Subaru in one go. Rem stopped speaking as her shoulders shook, her eyes filled with rage as they glared at Subaru. Then, her anger abruptly wavered from surprise.
What the hell?
For, as Rem spoke words filled with hatred, Subaru had been crying quietly.
I knew it was. Something like that.
Sobs came up his throat, hot tears slipping out of his eyes and falling upon his cheeks. The flood of seemingly ceaseless tears continued as Subaru said in a sorrowful, halting voice.
So that's what it was. I knew there was some reason behind all the kindness, but I was too afraid to ask. It was the two of them who had drilled the basics of work into good-for-nothing Subaru. Ram had scoffed at him for not knowing how to put on a butler outfit. Rem had retailored the ill-fitting suit and taught him how to put it on. Ram had patiently stuck with Subaru when he'd been painstakingly learning characters. After the promise to have Rem cut his hair, she'd often been staring at him. He'd been happy to have people paying attention to him and urging him on. They were all kind memories he could never forget. I finally learned how to peel veggies without cutting my hand. I learned how to do laundry right, didn't finish learning how to clean the place. But he couldn't have hoped for more in 4 days. But he'd thought that, if he could get past those 4 days, there was much more to learn in the days to come. Reading, it's just the simple stuff, but I can do that now. I studied like I promised. I read the picture book. It's all thanks to you, too.
What are you talking about?
The tone of Rem's voice fell, like she was creeped out by Subaru's rambling words. Subaru looked straight up into Rem's eyes.
I'm talking about what you two have done for me.
I recall no such thing.
Why don't you remember?
The sudden burst of rage made Rem take a step back without thinking. Subaru forced his lying body to rise, glaring at Rem with his teeth bared as he shouted.
Why'd everyone leave me behind? What did I do to you? Tell me what I did to you. He couldn't control his emotions. He knew full well he'd be ripped to pieces, but Subaru's heart, his very soul, could not stop shouting. He'd been summoned to another world, subjected to senseless things, and in spite of it all, he'd gritted his teeth and pushed forward. But he'd reached his limit. What did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? Why do girls hate me that much? Even that promise, I've always low.
The impact did not permit him to say any more. The sudden force bent back Subaru's body. It gently hit the tree trunk behind him. Subaru heard nearby sounds like faint breathing and frothing water. When he shifted his gaze, he immediately discovered the cause. His throat. Half of Subaru's throat had been ripped out. He was gurgling air and bubbles of blood from the middle of his windpipe. Dumbfounded, he looked at Rem's face as she stared at the wound. Having seen that much, Subaru's eyes lost their spark, going dizzy and white. He couldn't speak. His mind felt like someone had turned off the switch. Everything grew distant. There was no pain, no sadness. He left behind all his emotions. But in the end, he had the faint sense he could hear someone's sad voice.
Sister is too kind.
He wasn't aware of the exact moment he returned to consciousness.
His vision flickered between red and white. The world was bent and warped. Unable to feel his arms or legs, he made a thick, anguished scream as if someone were wringing his intestines like wet laundry. He twisted his body and leapt, every movable part of his entire body unleashing fierce incomprehension. He didn't know what was going on. The burning pain of his leg being severed and the scars of his body being lashed all over by the chain were gone. He'd lost his blood. He'd lost his life. He died. He hadn't wanted to die. He hated the pain, the suffering, the sadness, the fear, all of it. He wanted to push it all away. Everything he could see, everything he could touch, everything he could feel.
He heard something. He heard someone's voice. He heard a voice, like someone was desperately trying to calm a wild beast.
The meaning didn't get through. He didn't understand the meaning. He didn't want to understand the meaning. It was useless to listen. Listening would only get him hurt. Listening wouldn't change a thing. Yet, as he rejected all, color returned to the world, as did sound, as did shape. The senses of his entire disheveled body told him correctly that blood was reaching his limbs.
His flailing hand hit something, breaking fingernails and ripping the back of his hand, making it bleed. The sharp pain jabbed into his brain, somewhat lessening the force of his scream. Then he realized it. Someone had grabbed and wrapped up his hurting arms. He felt something similar on his legs. Something was covering him, making him unable to move either leg. Right above him, his returning vision saw the familiar white ceiling he'd seen several times over now. He realized he was lying face up on the soft bed. He finally breathed out, strength draining from his stiffened body when...
Dear guest, have you finally calmed down? Dear guest, have you finally stopped flailing?
The instant his ears heard the two familiar voices, Subaru remembered to scream.
Subaru's first day at Roswaal Manor had begun in the worst way possible. Subaru lived with the shame of having already died 6 times since arriving in that world. They were most certainly not peaceful deaths. Each death came with its own commensurate sense of loss. You didn't get used to the pain and suffering of it. Though he picked himself up each time, no one could understand the loneliness, the desolation, the anguish he felt. He'd resolved that no matter what pickle he might find himself in his heart, at least, would not falter. But that resolve had been shattered by his latest return by death. His sense of loss, of despair, of loneliness gouged Subaru just as deeply as the bonds formed over the days before. There was no way he could recover. He didn't have the strength to recover.
Emilia, sitting on the bed beside Subaru, smiled at him as she patted his injured right hand.
All right, done. I think it's nicely patched up, but you mustn't thrash around like that, okay?
At that moment, Subaru and Emilia were the only two people in the room. The two maids who had been present when Subaru awoke retreated in the face of Subaru's disgraceful behavior right after waking, leaving things to Emilia.
Ram and Rem were really so worried about you.
Subaru reflexively raised his face at the mention of two names he didn't want to hear. Subaru's reaction put a bit of surprise on Emilia's face, but she instantly brushed it off with a small shake of her head.
They're feeling unusually down, thinking they may have offended you somehow. How about you say something to them next time you see them?
Offended, ha? No, they didn't do anything. There's nothing between those people and me.
Emilia's feminine eyebrows softly grimaced at the insensitive tone of his voice. Her reaction was in the corner of Subaru's vision, but no apology or excuse came from his lips. Instead, what came out was a question without the slightest hint of sarcasm.
Hey, Emilia! Do you think I'm a bother?
How could I think you're a bother? You saved my life, Subaru. What are you supposed to do if someone you owe a debt to just gets up and leaves? It really put me in a bind.
Subaru listened in silence, belatedly realizing that he was staring intently at every detail of Emilia's face and actions.
Oh, whoa. I was seriously...
He was disheartened that it was he who had given Emilia such a look of distrust. Emilia had unexpectedly hit the nail on the head, had she not. To stop thinking of your benefactor as your benefactor was the lowest thing you could do. Emilia was the only oasis Subaru had in an uncertain world. Subaru, having lost everything else he'd set his heart upon, had nowhere else to turn. He suddenly had a small thought. Perhaps it was to Emilia that he should reveal the truth of the return by death. That's right! Now that he thought about it, Subaru had tried to change his dead-end reality completely on his own so far. But all he'd achieved was a dead-end fate, with both the future and the past blocked off. Breaking through that stalemate required fundamental change. Maybe the answer was to form a bond of trust with a third party, someone he could rely on? Emilia, there's something I want to tell you.
The clouds seemed to lift as Subaru's feelings of hesitation and unease parted inside him. Hearing the tone of Subaru's voice fall like that, Emilia sat back down in a chair looking at Subaru with a face tense with concern. Watching himself reflected in her violet eyes, Subaru thought of how he should begin this.
How should he talk about return by death? Perhaps Subaru ought to first find out if it was something that happened to other people of that world, too. It was a pretty funny story, really. The chances were high she'd think it was a big joke, but Emilia would listen to Subaru tell it, wouldn't she? Then and there, that was the hope that kept Subaru going. He talked to her about return by death, and that he hoped she would lend him her strength.
Subaru, well aware that here he was, already receiving her gratitude and yet making another request, opened his mouth. They'd change this extremely confusing situation. They'd fight against fate and win together. Or so he thought.
Emilia,
He began his confession. The moment the thought formed, it came.
Scumfort. Something's wrong, Subaru's mind told him. What's wrong? He wondered back, but he immediately noticed why. Sound. Sound was gone. There was no sound anywhere. His own heartbeat. Emilia's breaths. The sounds of morning filtering through the window all had completely vanished from the world. And that was but the prelude for what was to come. Next, movement followed sound, vanishing from the world as well. The passing of time lengthened. A single moment extended to eternity. The next second simply never arrived.
Emilia's serious expression remained before his eyes, unmoving. She was like an ice statue, her next motion an eternity away. Subaru was the same. He couldn't move. His mouth, his eyes, nothing for eternity. Sound had vanished, time had stopped, and Subaru's hand could not even reach out to beg. For some reason, only Subaru's mind continued on during the phenomenon beyond his understanding.
And then, suddenly, it came. A black cloud. Subaru, unable to blink, suddenly saw it fill his vision. In a world where nothing could move, only the cloud was still in motion. The The cloud wriggled and changed shape. Its mass was such that it could be held in the palms of one's hands. Bit by bit, the contours of the cloud took form, and it finished changing shape. Subaru saw something like a black palm.
It had 5 fingers. It didn't reach to an elbow, but he could definitely make out a forearm. The black fingers shifted. The gentle movements of what clearly had the shape of a hand swam through the air. Subaru's mind gasped when he saw where it was headed. The black fingers slowly reached to Subaru's chest and seemed to go right in.
Subaru felt the feeling straight to his soul. The feeling of the fingers brushing against his internal organs, stroking his ribcage. Discomfort and unease gripped Subaru. The black cloud wouldn't stop moving. It was as if it hadn't found what it was looking for and had to look deeper into Subaru's chest. Hey, hold on here. His voice wouldn't come out. His body couldn't resist. Subaru's mind let out a terrified yelp. This isn't funny. Subaru was shaken beyond what he could call his innards, to the very core of his being. Could anyone put into words why having your internal organs damaged hurt? The question is pointless. No one needs to think about it. In that instant, Subaru felt no need to put into words what that excruciating pain felt like. It was really simple. Having his heart mercilessly squeezed felt like his very soul was being crushed. He couldn't scream. He couldn't writhe from the pain.
There was only suffering. And along with suffering came something that made Subaru wish he could scream. The pain was pulling apart the person called Subaru. His mind was frayed, twisting, falling apart. Subaru was being cut into pieces, unable to remember what a logical thought felt like.
Bari! Subaru, what's wrong? Don't go all quiet like that. It worries me.
Her hands were on his thighs as the silver-haired beauty gazed into Subaru's eyes with concern. Subaru seemed to stop holding his breath when he was sure his fingers were moving as he intended. He gingerly touched his own chest, confirming from the outside that his heart was making quiet beats. His body moved, his voice came out, he couldn't feel any pain from his heart.
But the fear remained. Subaru fell into despair, for it had ripped his one hope to shreds. Just thinking about defying it a second time made him see the swaying black cloud in his mind. Subaru had no choice but to face facts.
Unable to hold back her emotions, Emilia put her palm against Subaru's face, at a loss as she asked an uncertain question.
Well, what's wrong? You've been acting weird since earlier. If something's wrong...
I want to ask you a favor.
Subaru cut off Emilia's worried voice midway, lying down and turning away his head. He couldn't face her. His features probably looked horrible.
If he looked at Emilia in his current emotional state, there was no telling what he might say to her. Working all out to keep his mind steady, Subaru could manage to say only one thing. He threw away the words he wanted to say. He threw away the feelings that wanted her to hear. He threw away everything. Don't have anything to do with me.
Listlessly, that was all he said as he curled into bed. He didn't even look at Emilia's shocked reaction. Unconsciously, Subar had firmly grasped a single fact the moment the palm touched his chest.
He would not be permitted to break free. Subaru was alone, and he would remain alone. Having brushed off Emilia, Subaru gloomily began his fourth loop. Roswaal went to Subaru's room after he'd heard Emilia with his heartless statement. Subaru largely didn't remember what they'd talked about, but he felt like he'd been appraised like an expensive vase. He didn't know if that was just this time, or if it had happened before and he just hadn't noticed.
I shall treat you as a guest for as little as you prefer.
Subaru felt like he'd said something convenient like that. He also felt like the details didn't matter anymore. If he left the mansion, they'd shut him up for good. That was certain. But even if he was dead weight in the mansion, he couldn't avoid getting ground into mincemeat in the near future. He felt like his saved game guaranteed a bad end. The fact that it was autosave made it extra brutal. Subaru was on top of the bed and not moving much, but his breaths were quick and ragged. Fearful of falling asleep, Subaru had used the feathered pen in his hand to cut the back of his other hand several times. Every time his eyelids seemed to droop, he forced his consciousness awake through pain. If he slept, he didn't know what he'd wake up to. He'd already died 3 times. In the Royal Capital loop, he hadn't experienced more than 3 deaths. To Subaru, plunged into that first day for the 4th time around, dying a 4th death was unknown territory. Maybe if he died here, he'd never come back. He couldn't find a way to avoid death. But still, he didn't want to die. He distrusted all and struggled against all in his desperate fight to live. He forgot the passage of time, the churning of his empty stomach. Subaru became eager to simply exist. The pain of his wound felt like affirmation of his existence. The spaces between the holes in his hand vanished. Pain, joy, pain, joy, pain, pain, pain.
Suddenly, his face shot up when he abruptly heard a little girl's voice.
You certainly have a cowardly look about you.
A girl was standing at the entrance, leaning against it, shooting Subaru a look like she was gazing at a beast. Beatrice, whom he had yet to meet even once during this loop, had come to visit. Subaru's vigilance ratcheted up at the unprecedented change of circumstances.
So it's you this time? He belatedly realized that his voice was low and scratchy. It surprised him. His voice held more hostility in it than he'd imagined. Maybe he was voicing his feeling that the world was cursed.
What an incorrigible fool to waste away like this in the span of a day or two.
No one asked you. What did you come for?
Beatrice, having mocked Subaru's disgraceful sight and received his sullen retort in turn, narrowed her eyes slightly.
Pucky and that little girl asked me to pay you a visit.
Puck and Emilia.
You were acting oddly since you awoke, I suppose. So they suspected that I had done something to you when you first woke up. Ye rather rude suggestion, if I may say so.
It was true and Beatrice was innocent, but those things didn't register with Subaru.
Surely Subaru's heartless words had hurt Emilia, yet she was concerned for Subaru all the same, enough to speak directly to Beatrice, even if her suspicions were misplaced. As a result, Beatrice, with a weakness for Puck to begin with, had Puck begging her to help them, so here she was, reluctantly showing herself in Subaru's room. Emilia's concern for him brought just a tiny bit of warmth to Subaru's heart, even if it was meaningless as far as breaking the stalemate was concerned. Got it! I'm all right now! You came to apologize, and that's enough.
Beatrice's lips twisted as Subaru tried to brush her away.
Why must I apologize to you? I wonder. Before anything else, I will not be leaving until that misunderstanding is cleared up.
Instead of leaving the room, she marched over to the bed. Subaru was about to pile on more complaints when...
Oh! Remember that? Truth before you?
Subaru watched as she crinkled her nose and tilted her head. If she just stayed quiet, she'd look pretty adorable, but Beatrice looked displeased at being stared at and covered her face, glaring at Subaru.
And the energist, your dull face, I suppose, that is rotten. It is quite thick all around you.
Huh?
Perhaps I speak of the scent tickling my nose. It would be wise to avoid meeting the twins for a while.
Beatrice pinched her nose and waved with her free hand as if driving off an unpleasant scent.
But Subaru's mind couldn't let go of the keyword scent. Scent. Certainly someone had used that word around the end of the third loo. A smell coming from me.
That? The scent of the witch. Perhaps your nose is broken?
He remembered that word. He'd come across that piece of vocabulary only recently. So that meant the jealous witch?
In today's day and age, there is none other who would be called witch, I suppose.
Her statement, belittling him as a petty idiot, aroused only more questions in Subaru.
Why is that scent coming from me?
Who is to say? Perhaps the witch took a liking to you, or perhaps she hates the very sight of you. Either way, the witch giving you special treatment makes you attract trouble.
Beatrice slumped her shoulders, her gloomy behavior indicating any further talk about it was unwelcome. Which Abeam shunned throughout the world to the point that the fairy tale The Witch of Jealousy would not record her name. But Subaru had no connection to the witch or the story. He'd read about it only in a book. Naturally, without any memory of having met the witch, he had no memory of how he might carry a lingering scent from her touch.
Rem had also said he stank of the witch, hadn't she?
He felt that the overwhelming hostility was related in part to the scent of the witch. If that was so, he'd earned her hatred through something he had no memory of. With one slander piled on another, she felt she had no choice but to silence him.
Subaru, having grasped something that was wholly outside his control, sighed at length. As Subaru remained silent, Beatrice looked at him as she reached toward the doorknob.
If nothing's wrong with you, I'm leaving. I should tell Pucky that we had a chat and what we talked about, I suppose.
She seemed ready to vanish into the passage when he called out to stop her.
Wait a sec.
Beatrice looked distinctly displeased as she looked back at him. Subaru stubbornly arrived at the words and tossed them out.
You feel bad about what you did to me, don't you?
He didn't know if it meant anything or not, but he thought it was worth a shot. Beatrice shot Subaru a sour look as Subaru knocked against the bed and asked again.
Do you feel bad about it?
I think no such thing.
I'll tell Puck on you.
Beatrice repositioned herself to face Subaru, crossing her arms and raising her nose with a haughty air.
I'll forgive you if you'll do one little favor for me.
Would you speak it? I wonder.
Could you protect me until sunrise on the 5th da, the morning after tomorrow?
It was a thoroughly shameless request to make of a girl who looked younger than he did. Beatrice was silent for a while in the face of Subaru's heartfelt request.
That is a rather vague statement. Perhaps there is a reason someone is after you.
The question Beatrice countered with was quite natural and sensible. Beatrice kept Subaru in her sights as she paced around the room.
In the first place, I do not want to bring discord to this manor. This manor is a place that to me I must not lose, I suppose.
I don't want to cause any trouble. I just want to put out any sparks that fly.
That is quite a sentiment coming from someone trying to make it another's problem. Another's problem?
For once, I don't have a comeback.
Beatrice sighed as Subaru bowed down before her. Subaru was still bowed as he thought he heard a sound like the door being closed from the inside. The sound of Subaru's request being denied, and Beatrice returning to her archive. The moment he heard that sound, Subaru's threadbare hopes snapped.
Could you put out your hand? Could you put out your hand?
With Subaru filled with resignation, Beatrice walked to the side of the bed and offered her tiny hand. Beatrice's irritation sent Subaru, in complete shock, rushing to take her hand. As he did, Beatrice scowled as she looked at the damaged back of his hand.
Disgusting. Perhaps you are an unsalvageable deviant who delights in self-harm.
Roswaal's got the deviant market locked up. I was just trying to give myself a tattoo and messed it up.
Your artistic sense, skill, and talent for lies are completely lacking. There is no saving you from that.
Exhaling, Beatrice put her tiny palm on top of Subaru's hand, as if trying to cover the wounds. Her smooth fingers invited his in until their hands intertwined.
I shall grant thy wish. By the name of Beatrice, the pact is formed.
Beatrice's solemn statement left Subaru completely at a loss for words. Suddenly, the girl before his eyes looked completely different than before. As her fingers gripped his, the warmth they conveyed made his mind see the aura of mystique surrounding her.
Makeshift or not, a pact is a pact. Perhaps I have been moved by your irrational request. Perhaps...
Beatrice released his fingers and crossed her arms once again. Subaru bowed before her, suppressing the wave of emotion that hit him. He didn't put the emotions into words, but they gushed from a bottomless well deep in his heart. He didn't know how to react to being offered salvation from the least expected source.
Seriously, a little girl's gonna make me cry.
Could you not say, little girl, I wonder? Also, I will never forgive you if you say one word to Pucky about this.
So, that's the important part? Desperation gets you demon-possessed, I tell you.
Subaru made a bitter smile in response to Beatrice's look of genuine hostility. His fourth loop had begun with despair. It was a small smile, the only of this loop, but it was there. By forming a temporary pact with Beatrice, Subaru gained a tiny but tangible piece of security. However, the circumstances pressing down on Subaru had not fundamentally improved at all. As was his wont, Subaru continued life as a hermit in the room he had been granted. Beatrice was not hovering around Subaru, protecting him 24 hours a day. The problem was from the night of the 4th day to the morning of the 5th. To reduce the effort needed to protect him during that time, he'd be leaving the room, not showing his face again until the appointed hour. In return, the one who visited Subaru time and again and currently nodding while sitting on the side of the bed with a charming smile on her face was Emilia.
I see. So Beatrice came to properly apologize. I'm glad. A job well done.
For Emilia to approach him like this after Subaru had treated her so poorly, which weighed heavily on his conscience, it was no exaggeration to say he thought of her like a goddess, his one light in a dark world. When Emilia visited again and he tried to apologize for his initial rude statement, she simply brushed off Subaru's horrible words.
You were just overwhelmed, right? It can happen to anyone. It can't be helped. Ram and Rem will be pleased to hear you say that, though.
Subaru gave no proper reply to the gentle request she'd slipped in at the end. Their loyalty was so great that they'd kill someone merely for knowing an inconvenient truth. Subaru had experienced that firsthand, but he couldn't hate them for it even so. He closed his eyes and thought back on his days at the manor. Back then, during those memories, were there not moments when Subaru and the sisters drew closer together?
Maybe he just wanted to believe it was so.
Emilia looked at the tray left on the side of the bed and the untouched meal, slowly going cold, resting upon it as she murmured in a sullen tone.
So you really didn't eat breakfast, did you?
Sorry.
After snapping at Emilia, Subaru had become more quiet and withdrawn. Though Subaru acted like that, Ram and Rem diligently went about their duties as servants, even when they knew he would never touch the food nor thank them for it. One was rude while the other was polite only on the surface, but both were very formal and professional at heart. Subaru knew that. Despite knowing that, he could not accept the food.
For all he knew, it might be poisoned. That was the thought that passed through his mind when he looked at it. He hated himself for doubting the two of them. However, Subaru knew a future existed where the sisters waved around horrid weapons to kill him. He knew they had many virtues, but they'd try to kill him anyway. It was when Subaru had accepted that fact that his despair had truly begun.
Maybe it's tough, but it's bad for you if you don't eat at least a little bit.
My stomach won't take it. Well, maybe if Emilia Tan went, say, for me, I could eat, but...
Subaru cursed what an incurable joker he was, sending such a flippant remark Emilia's way when she was genuinely worried about him. However...
Here then, say ah.
Eh?
I said, say ah.
Emilia had set the food tray on her lap, lifting a spoon and looking at Subaru. She used the spoon to scoop up some soup, which was still somewhat warm, and gently brought it towards Subaru's mouth. Subaru immediately shook his head, unable to understand what Emilia was trying to do.
No. No. Wait. Hold up, Emilia Tan. What are you doing?
What do you mean? What? You said you'd eat if I did this, didn't you? So eat. I'm saying, say aha and everything.
Error. This is like a ritual that girls don't actually do. Their faces just go bright red and that's as far as it goes, I thought.
If you're going to speak like a child, you can't be embarrassed at being fed like one. That would be silly.
As Subaru dragged his feet, Emilia went, say, ah, again with a powerful, compelling stare. Subaru finally buckled under the pressure, feeling like he'd gone red to the tips of his ears as he opened his mouth.
There. Swallow. Here's the next one. Here.
That's too fast. Was that just to get my guard down?
The way Emilia carried soup to his lips, automatically with no wasted motion whatsoever, made him wonder if she'd been in a fast-feeding competition or something. Subaru tried to keep up with one spoonful after another before roughly waving his hand midway.
Ooh. Time out. Can we stop? It's going down my throat the wrong way.
Goodness. And it was going so well too, Subaru?
Weirdly, my throat feels all weird.
Subaru averted his face from Emilia, faking coughs to try to make the action seem more natural. He didn't want Emilia to see his face just then. Something hot was welling from deep in Subaru's eyes. He opened his eyes to give his tears somewhere to run and desperately tried to stop them from flowing. She continued to be kind to him in a world where he could see no hope. He wondered if he was truly worthy of such treatment. For Subaru, Natsuki was in despair precisely because he rejected that he was.
Hey, Subaru.
As she called out to him in concern, Subaru lightly cleared his throat and tested his voice as he got back in order.
Okay. Yeah, I'm all right now. I think. I'm all right.
He made the richest expression as he turned toward Emilia and met her extremely gentle eyes, looking right at him.
The way you put that makes this feel really naughty somehow.
Emilia, tilting her head, apparently hadn't noticed the risque, bewitching nature of her statement. Or maybe it had all been in his head to begin with. And so he finished eating, with Emilia offering a say ah, and him opening his mouth, cheeks red from shyness and complicated sentiments. With the meal finished, Emilia clapped once in satisfaction.
good. Now, what do we say when we're done eating?
That was great.
That's bad manners. Once more, and say it right.
Thank you for the food.
You're very welcome.
Faced with Emilia's broad smile, Subaru patted his belly, which strangely felt nice and full. His stomach felt no discomfort at having been stuffed after 2 days of going empty.
Ram said he hasn't eaten properly in a while, so he must be gentle on his stomach. And that's how Rem made it. They're such good girls, aren't they?
Emilia's words, as if boasting on behalf of the sisters, stabbed Subaru's doubts like a dagger. If that was the truth, he'd be happy enough to cry at such a show of concern. But Subaru knew better. The very pain of the delusion made him want to cry. If only their gentleness and kind treatment didn't have that lurking behind it.
Well, now that you've eaten too, you must be tired, so I'll head back and let you rest.
You could always sleep here beside me?
Good, good. Seems you're already your usual self. Now, I do have things I need to be doing too. Don't tell anyone I was slacking off, okay?
Emilia winked and stuck out her tongue. Subaru, remembering what Emilia would normally be doing at a time like this, felt deeply ashamed. Emilia had a kingdom resting on her shoulders. She didn't have 1 second to waste as she spent each day striving for a better future. She shouldn't have been wasting a single second of that precious time on someone worthless like Subaru.
Emilia, keep your door locked at night and don't let anyone in, okay?
Perhaps he said it because Emilia's kindness had rekindled the tiniest spark of the will to defy fate. Emilia brushed back her silver hair and inclined her head ever so slightly at Subaru's sudden admonition.
Are you sneaking? Got it.
Right, no. Hey, that was Puck, not Emilia just now, wasn't it?
Wow, got it in one.
Puck popped his head out of Emilia's hair and grinned at her and Subaru. He swished his tail as Subaru glared at him, no doubt having been listening in that hiding place from the very beginning.
I didn't want to intrude on such a lovely scene, but your emotions suddenly turned serious, huh? That got my attention.
I just have a bad feeling, okay? You take good care of Emilia now.
With the black cloud lurking, Subaru had to be evasive when speaking about the future. Even so, Puck, able to read emotions, accepted his words without question.
I'll have you know, I really don't like feeling left behind in this conversation.
It's just saying a cute girl like you should always be careful about night visits and to watch out for cars and men. Right, Dad?
That's right, Leah. Daddy forbids you from seeing men bad-looking, dark-haired men in particular.
Puck laughed out loud as Subaru invoked the name of the famous betrayer. Emilia pinched the laughing Puck and shoved him back into her hair, this time rising to her feet. Subaru saw both of them off and, now alone in the room, flopped onto the bed. He'd gotten them to watch out more, but it was a small comfort. To begin with, the current crisis had little to do with either of them, so he figured they'd be all right.
Ah,
The instant Subaru's mind felt a smidgen of relief, his consciousness dove into a deep sleep. The pangs of sleep that he had kept at bay with pain for so long suddenly rushed back, robbing Subaru of his will, and his stomach was full too. His consciousness felt like it was sinking downward, unable to resist. Subaru's consciousness felt like a floating cloud, trapped between dream and reality. He'd heard somewhere that dreams had the side effect of organizing the waking brain's information. That would explain why Subaru, having delayed his sleep so long, beheld a string of such clear and vivid memories, as if they meant to haunt his dreams. Subaru's vivid, dead memories replayed over and over, etching themselves deeper into his mind. He moaned, tossed, turned. He made anguished sounds as sweat drenched his entire body. Immersed in tears and faint sounds, his soul was whittled down, down, and when the final thread was cut, surely nothing would remain. That was how far he had been worn down both mentally and physically. Abruptly, the tension in Subaru's body vanished. It was as if the cold and terror that made his body shake had been swept aside. It was his hands. Someone was holding Subaru's hands. Someone's touch from the real world pulled back Subaru, drifting in unconsciousness in the bed. It was a warm sensation, a gentle sensation, one that conveyed compassion. He felt like he'd been saved. He forgot his suffering and returned to peaceful sleep. Who did it? What was it? Was it real or just a convenient trick of the dream? He continued to feel warmth lingering between the palms of his hands.
Just how long were you going to sleep, I wonder?
Whew!
Subaru cried out in pain, having been violently kicked, followed by a hard landing on the floor. When Subaru shook his head and rose up, Beatrice was there, scowling, one leg raised in an unladylike manner. Beatrice snorted, once again unable to hide her displeasure.
You were sleeping quite comfortably while I bothered to come at the appointed hour.
It's like you've got to put people down, even when you don't have to.
As Subaru talked back, he broke out in a cold sweat at having unintentionally slept. He'd gone as far as to hurt himself to stay awake and to keep his guard up.
Sleeping on the all-important 4th day. Maybe I really do have a death wish.
Would you cease your muttering? I wonder. There are more appropriate places for it.
Beatrice, looking down and watching as Subaru lightly poked himself, sat on her stool as she spoke. Seeing her in her usual position like that, Subaru realized something was off and looked all around. He was already in the archive when he awoke.
Well, this is a surprise. Did you carry me in my sleep?
Would not like to spend time in a room filled with that scent of yours, I suppose. This archive is my place and none others. Could you behave yourself while here, I wonder?
Subaru decided that Beatrice's actions taken without asking him had improved his situation. Beatrice's passage would keep an assailant from narrowing down Subaru's location. Surely Rem had no sure means of breaching the passage herself.
You actually thought this out, huh?
Do not just sit on the floor mumbling. Would you like to be slaughtered like an insect? I wonder.
Oh, so that's what you're reading, said Subaru, looking at the pages open before Beatrice as he stuck out his tongue. Apparently thinking of this as consideration would be overstating the case. Subaru rose from the floor, abruptly staring at his own 2 hands. An odd sensation remained. Someone had held his hand as he slept.
Hey, Beatrice, don't tell me you held my hand while I was asleep.
I won't be telling you such a thing, I suppose. I would not, even if Pucky asked me to.
What a thing to say. But hey, at least we can die together.
No, absolutely not.
Beatrice, rather sour, tapered her lips as Subaru looked around the room once more. The archive, filled with books as usual, lacked any convenient place to sit.
How am I supposed to kill time in here?
With the time limit so close, his anxiety and stress were heightened. It was an open question as to how long he could keep his cool. If he could just immerse his head into something and forget the passage of time.
Oh, right. Are there any books here written just in iScript?
To think that you cannot read but the simplest things. How many humans do you think would cry with joy at just the thought of entering the Mathers family's archive of forbidden books?
Well, I do feel bad for them. So what, you're here full time?
Subaru had never seen Beatrice walking about except at mealtimes. Aside from the exception of her having visited his room the day before, Beatrice was always in the archive on her stool. Beatrice lowered her head a little at Subaru's question.
Such is the pact I have made.
Another pact, huh? Maybe I shouldn't say this when you're helping me, but isn't it rough?
All the pacts, they are things I desire, I suppose. All the pacts, they are things I desire, I suppose.
He'd heard the term pact several times since arriving in that world, always with heavy overtones. Beatrice spoke the word with the same weight as Emilia and Puck did for the spiritual pact they had. Subaru appreciated as much, having formed one temporarily with Beatrice himself. Beatrice looked so young, yet here she was in and upholding a pact. For some reason, Subaru felt something like an unendurable ache deep in his chest when he looked at her.
Hey, are you really fine with all? Whoa!
Your questions are becoming annoying. You can read something and be quiet, I suppose.
She underscored her statement by tossing her book at him. When Subaru caught it, he realized that the book he'd caught was written in iScript, down to the title. When Subaru lifted his face, Beatrice had already lost interest in him, lowering her eyes to the book in her own hands, making a show of declining conversation. She seemed to be strenuously insisting that he leave his half-assed question unfinished. While her demeanor left no room for words of thanks, Subaru was grateful and happy. Time in the archive of forbidden books passed gently and quietly, with neither exchanging words, only the sounds of the pages being softly turned echoed within the archive. That said, Subaru's heart wasn't into reading at the time. All he was doing was turning the same page over and back again, making the same page sound like a prank.
Shut in the archive of forbidden books, he had no way to know what was going on outside. Beyond the room not having windows, the very nature of the archive was to be in a separate space, locked off from the outside world. He had no way to tell the time of day or feel the passage of time. He wondered what time it was by then. By simple logic, being in the room for half a day would get him through the problematic night, but he had only a vague sense of just how much time had passed while he'd been in the archive. He couldn't trust his own senses, but he also hesitated to ask Beatrice. It wasn't for any reason as simple as not wanting to stop Beatrice while she focused on her reading. Subaru was afraid that any action he initiated might stir up something. Supping. His fingers turning the pages of the book were numb. The tip of his tongue begged for water. His heart was beating like an alarm bell. He was out of breath. How long could he remain strong against such tension, he wondered. If the start had been so brutal, the end might be without any warning whatsoever.
A murmur abruptly echoed through the silent archive.
Calling?
Subaru's face seemed to leap up as Beatrice put down her book and slid her legs onto the floor. Rather than speaking to Subaru, it felt like she was murmuring to herself.
A call for me, I suppose?
Beatrice waved a finger as she spoke. The next moment, Subaru's whole body felt ill as space bent. Subaru made a small moan as his entire body shuddered from the sensation that most resembled floating. Hearing this, Beatrice looked at Subaru as if only just remembering he was there.
You were there, weren't you? I forgot, I suppose?
That's a bad joke, forgetting about a guy right in front of your face.
Pucky is calling. It would seem this is an urgent matter.
With that as Subaru's only warning, Beatrice strode past him to the door like it was the natural and obvious thing to do. Subaru's voice shook as he called out to stop her.
Fikiltan. Wait, hold on. If you go out now.
You can stay shut in here if you like. Perhaps you will be safe here?
Beatrice left behind her words of obvious sarcasm as she passed through the door. Subaru, blood rushing to his head from her attitude, seemed to kick away his chair as he leapt up and reached toward the door. He'd hesitated for only a few seconds, but...
To hell with it. What's the big deal, right?
Spurring himself on with the foul-mouthed statement, he roughly opened the door and stepped outside. The next moment, it hit him. Without thinking, Subaru's voice leaked out of his lips like a complete idiot. His hand shielded his eyes from the piercing sunlight of the morn that greeted him. Deeply moved, he waved his hand in the air as if to confirm it. Subaru's body wobbled forward toward the window just on the opposite side of the corridor that peeked out over the inner garden, beyond which the sun had just begun its rise. It was the morning of the 5th day that he'd yearned for but had never reached.
You mean I made it? Past the 4th night?
Unable to believe the result before his eyes, he pushed open the window, almost pounding it. Holding down his hair as a cool breeze blew in, Subaru took a breath of the fresh morning air. He stumbled, bumped his back against the wall, and slid down, having lost the will to stand. He could do nothing but stare in shock. He'd given up. He'd surrendered to despair. He'd been worn to the bone. And yet, Subaru had passed beyond the 4th day and arrived at the 5th.
Aha!
Without realizing it, a dry laugh came over him. Once it began, he knew no way to stop it.
Ha ha ha. What is this? Hey, what is this? This is just ha ha.
He couldn't think of any rational way to show how he felt at that moment. Hugging his knees, Subaru remained squatting in the hallway, laughing like a madman. He thought it was a far-off place that his hand would never reach. He couldn't speak, he couldn't find the words. Finally, Subaru had suddenly a voice like a bell interrupted Subaru's hollow joy.
Subaru?
Lifting his gaze in annoyance, he saw a silver-haired girl standing deeper in the hall. Emilia. He was able to find her safe and sound here on the morn of the 5th day. Both of them had gotten past the 4th night. That fact made Subaru tremble. He'd hoped for this chance. If the morning of the 5th day greeted both of them, they could rekindle that promise and have it granted. He did introduce Emilia to the kids in the village. They'd both walk around the blooming flower garden together. They had formed the same memories together. And yet...
Emilia?
Subaru began feeling a sense of accomplishment that barely seemed real while Emilia watched him in silence. Then, as if Emilia had remembered something, she rushed over to Subaru.
Subaru, where did you go? I mean, no, that's fine. It's fine, just come with me.
Emilia pulled up Subaru with surprising insistence and ran off with him. She looked like she wasn't going to take no for an answer as a smirk came over his face.
Where are we going? Hey, Emilia, listen to me. I've worked really hard to get to this point.
Subaru stared at the side of Emilia's face as he tried to find the words to convey his success.
Why are you making a face like that? I mean, it all turned out all right, didn't it? I'm safe and sound and you're... Yeah, let's go to the village, together, and then... There's lots I want to do with you and talk about with you. A lot's happened. I wanted you to know that
Subaru.
With one brief call of his name, she interrupted him. That was when he noticed the momentary wavering in her eyes, the irritation she could no longer conceal. The look she had was like when they'd been fighting for their lives at the fence's shop.
What in the world?
Happened. He tried to ask, but couldn't. For before he could put the word on his lips, a different sound slammed into his eardrums. It was a long, high-pitched sound filled with sadness that scarred the very soul. The morning air of the manor was rent by the unending cry of pain, as if someone were being torn asunder. They passed through the corridor and headed up the stairs. The east wing of the second floor of the manor was for the servants' bedrooms, where Subaru's room on previous loops had been. Emilia led him by hand to the innermost room, and there stood
Roswaal? And...
The man with long indigo hair narrowed his eyes as he saw both rushing over. Beside Roswaal stood Beatrice, leaning her back against the wall as a gray cat curled up on her shoulder. With the three of them having arrived, Subaru was about to ask about the circumstances when Roswaal spoke simply.
Inside!
Roswaal motioned to the open door of a bedroom beside him. When Subaru turned toward Emilia, she nodded to him as well. Emilia's clear violet eyes settled things for him. Holding his breath, Subaru walked in. Here, too, the yell continued unceasingly, filling the whole of the room. Subaru entered, his eyes wide open, frozen from tension, and then he saw. It was an immaculately preserved room. It looked like a girl's room with minimal furnishings employed to maximum effect. A reflection of a steadfast maid's person, es. Or, is braid, was an immaculate. For a moment, such feelings let Subaru forget the sight before his eyes, but the moment passed as the horrible truth crashed upon him, a truth from which he found nowhere to run. It was Ram yelling, tears pouring out, her deep sadness threatening to rip her throat asunder. And there lay Rem, still clinging to her older sister when she had breathed her final breath.
How many times had his mind gone blank from what he'd experienced? How many times had he come face to face with tragedy beaten into him? Wasn't it time someone saved him from this?
The blue-haired girl lay upon the bed, no longer breathing. Her skin was pale. Her eyes would never open again. She was dressed in a delicate negligee that somehow seemed perfect on her. Subaru abruptly realized that he hadn't seen Rem out of a maid uniform once.
Why did Rem?
As Subaru murmured, brushing his short hair back with his hand, he fell to his knees. His head hurt. His brain came up with the wonderful suggestion that the sight before him was all in his sleep-deprived imagination. This was his fourth loop at the manor. To Subaru, who'd already died and gone back 3 times, Rem was the person he was most wary of.
Then why? Why was Rem killed?
Surely it was Rem who killed Subaru, not the other way around. Suddenly, a little devil on Subaru's shoulder whispered, maybe she wasn't really dead? Maybe it was all a trick to make Subaru drop his guard? A joke in exceptionally poor taste was incomparably better than the nightmare before him being real. He approached Rem to check her pulse, but
Don't touch her.
as he reached out to touch Rem, his hand was slapped away, hard. When Subaru yelped and looked up, Rem was glaring angrily at him. The tear-filled rage on her face easily drowned out any words of retort Subaru might have used.
Don't touch my little sister.
She refused to let anyone come between them. With a tearful voice, Rem repeated herself as she clung to Rem's body, tears flowing quietly down her face. There was no sign that the devoted, pain-filled older sister expected her little sister to ever awaken. That made the truth clear. Rem really was dead. As Subaru wobbled out of the room, Roswaal stood by the doorway and voiced his deductions.
Apparently, death by debilitation. Her vigor was stolen as she slept, her heartbeat gently slowed, and the fire of her life puttered out, likely the work of a curse rather than magic per se.
Subaru's eyes snapped open at the word curse, the word for what the clown believed to be the cause of death. Death by debilitation via a curse. That was the direct cause of Subaru's deaths during the first and second loop. In other words, Rem had died from the same curse that had previously killed Subaru.
But I thought the curse came from Rim. The second loop, Subaru had died from debilitation via curse, as well as having his head smashed by an iron ball. Subaru had deduced from that night's circumstances that the witchcraft and the iron ball were linked. But Rem herself, being killed by a curse, had ripped his hypothesis to shreds. Then the shaman and Rem are separate?
Subaru's mind was in chaos as the thought of a new separate shaman arose. Rem had slain Subaru out of loyalty to Roswaal. At the very least, that was the only answer if Rem's words during the third loop were true. He wondered if Rem, who'd killed him by her own hand, and the shaman were connected somehow. But if that was the case, Rem being killed this time around made no sense whatsoever from the shaman's point of view. So maybe Rem and the shaman weren't connected to begin with.
The first time, the magic of a shaman had slain Subaru. The second time, the shaman's spell had debilitated Subaru when Rem murdered him for whatever reason. The third loop, Rem had eliminated him with no connection to the shaman whatsoever. The fourth time, I didn't do anything, so Rem was the target instead.
It was baseless supposition, but based on the circumstantial evidence, it was the only reasonable conclusion. If Subaru had been the target for reasons related to the royal succession, he could understand it as an indiscriminate preemptive strike against Emilia's side. The victim, be it Subaru or Rem, was random.
You appeared to be in raw hazard, deep, serious thought.
The mismatched blue and yellow eyes looked down, reflecting Subaru in them. Subaru's eyes rose as he felt like Roswaal's scrutinizing gaze was seeing into his very soul.
It pains me to ask such a thing, but do you have any idea about what happened? Good guest.
What? Why would you think I...
I am simply somewhat displeased at the moment that one of my pretty retainers has suffered such a fate, you see?
Roswaal abruptly shifted his gaze from Subaru to the painful sight inside the room. Looking at the side of his face, it truly sank into Subaru just how precarious his situation had become. Subaru had no way to prove his innocence. This time, Subaru had done nothing to earn the slightest smidgen of trust from the others. Emilia tugged on his sleeve, speaking with an anxious voice.
Subaru.
When he looked, the shimmer in her violet eyes seemed to be pleading with him. If you know anything, please say it. Her eyes and her calling his name told him that much. The implication of answering Emilia's earnest request hit Subaru hard. He'd have loved to tell everyone what he knew. He wanted to shout it at the very top of his lungs. When Subaru made no reply, Emilia's small fingers trembled a little as they held his sleeve.
He'd thought that repeating the past would lead to a better future. Yet here he was, every silver lining having a dark cloud, with the outcomes worse than he ever imagined possible.
Subaru?
Confusion clawed at the inside of his head. He'd thought that it would all be swept aside and things would be better someday. No, he thought they'd become better already. And the moment he thought it, this happened. The moment he pictured the black cloud and the world stopping, ceaseless pain gripped his head. His breath caught. The sensation of Emilia touching his sleeve made Subaru's stomach twist in pain. If Emilia kept her pleading look trained on him, Subaru's heart would falter. Even if he didn't, Puck, able to read emotions, could easily expose the fact that Subaru was hiding something. But still, Subaru couldn't explain anything about return by death, and that meant the torture would continue pain without end. He felt his tongue quickly dry. Unable to resist his urge to flee, he took a small step back.
If you know anything, you'll never escape me.
To the girl crying her eyes out inside the room, Subaru's small action looked like nothing more than an attempt to flee for his own convenience. Instantly, a raging gust of wind made the door violently shake, its passage blowing Subaru's hair down flat. The moment after the sudden gust made him close his eyes, a sharp pain heralded a vertical cut on his cheek.
Oh!
He immediately touched his cheek, moistening his palm with blood. Wind. The wind had wounded him. From within the room, Rem was shooting Subaru a hate-filled look as she trained her palm toward him.
If you know something, spill it.
Wait, Ram,
Can't, Subaru was about to say, but the word died instantly on his lips since he knew what would befall him. But he was coming up empty for any way to kick that can down the road. With Subaru holding his tongue, Ram shot him another gust of wind as a warning of what would follow. Had he been able to calmly assess the matter, he would have called it a blade of wind. Wind magic! Magic that inflicted cuts like the whirlwind monsters of lore. The sharp slice had enough power to leave a cut on the floor between Subaru and Rem, slice the door in half, and stop right at Subaru's cheek. Such was the power she threatened him with. If that hit him full force, faced with the phenomenon before his eyes, Subaru forgot to breathe. But Beatrice extended her cream-colored palm in front of Subaru and countered the blade of wind.
I am one who keeps her promises.
She gave her raised palm a small shake, as if that were no great feat, as she looked back at Ram.
I have made a promise to protect this man from harm while he stays at the manor. Lady Beatrice.
Whereas Beatrice's demeanor was elegant, Ram bit her tongue with indignant anger. As Ram raged to the side, Beatrice looked up at Roswaal, still standing right beside them.
Roswaal, your maid is being quite rude to your guest. Roswaal, your maid is being quite rude to your guest.
Certainly, I find that sincerely unfortunate. If possible, I would like to welcome him anew as my guest as soon as he breathes out what he is holding within to feel all the lighter.
How could he be involved in this matter, I wonder? He was in the archive of forbidden books all night.
This is too grave a matter to simply drop. Surely you comprehend this.
With negotiations having failed, Roswaal shrugged and raised his palms into the air. Subaru saw the multiple orbs of different colors that floated from his palms. They were red and blue, yellow and green. Even Subaru, untrained in the ways of magic, understood that those 4 colors represented magical power. Their beautiful glows contained energy beyond his imagination.
It is just like you to engage in petty tricks. Just because you have a little talent, a little more power than others, a pedigree just a little finer than others, you need to flaunt in others' faces. You are quite a child, I will have you know.
How very harsh of you. Is the difference between we, who walk about normally, and you, passing time in a room where time has stopped, so great? Perhaps we should put it to the test.
He could feel the magical tension between them making the very air twist. Subaru was becoming a third wheel as hostility rose.
However, to think that you would go through such trouble, are you truly so fond of him?
Your jokes are in as poor taste as your makeup. Roswaal, Pucky is my ideal partner. That human cannot match such lovely fur.
Beatrice looked defenseless as she stood before Roswaal's 4 glowing floating balls. However, the simply standing girl projected something around her so powerful that it made the air itself bend. Something invisible but frightening was about her. As the situation became explosive, with both wielders of supernatural power glaring at each other, Ram's shrill voice wedged itself between them.
It cares about that. Who cares?
Everyone looked at her as she stormed over, hands holding the hem of her skirt.
Let me through and do not interfere. If you know something, say it, all of it. Help me avenge her.
It was a sad, painful plea. The words gripped Subaru's heart. He truly wanted to tell her what she wanted to know, but Subaru had no words to offer her. Ram shot Subaru a despondent, despairing glare. Emilia stood beside Beatrice as if they were both shielding Subaru from her hostile gaze.
I'm sorry, Ram. I still believe in Subaru.
Emilia put her palm toward Ram to hold her in check while looking back at Subaru from the corner of her eye. Her eyes wavered, trying to find the words, before dropping for but a moment.
Subaru, please. If there's something you can do for Ram and Ren, please.
Her compassion made Subaru feel more ashamed. Emilia had sided with Subaru, even in such extreme circumstances, even though Subaru had said such horrible things to her at the start of the week, even though he was still holding his tongue in silence.
I'm sorry.
As if crushing Emilia's concerns under his heel, Subaru stepped not forward but back. In that instant, Emilia's eyes went silent as her emotions raced. They spoke of shock, sorrow, and above all, unbearable disappointment that her trust was about to be betrayed. What Subaru truly saw in Emilia's eyes was his own despair. He knew his actions had opened the door to a nightmare and could never be taken back. That was when Subaru, no longer able to meet Emilia's eyes, turned his back on her. Instantly, Emilia reached out toward his back. But this was to block the blade of wind before it reached Subaru. The wind crashed against pure magical power. Mana bounced off mana as Subaru ran.
Subaru.
Shaking off the voice trying to stop him, Subaru rushed down the corridor in a daze. He felt the magical confrontation behind him increasing in severity, but Subaru lacked the courage to look back. He was weak. He was fragile, unable to do anything. That was why he'd run out on Emilia, who had trusted him after all that, and Beatrice, who had tried to save his life, spurning their goodwill and good intentions. He didn't know what to do anymore. What he did know was that Ram shouted behind him like she was spitting blood.
I'll kill you!
Having lost her other half, the girl pursued him with a cry that threatened to tear her asunder. Covering his ears, shaking his head, making wordless sounds, Subaru ran. He ran, and he kept running. With his attention devoted solely to running, he didn't know how much time had passed. Out of breath, his knees begging for mercy, sweat dripping down his chin, he kept running. If he didn't keep running, the incoherent emotions following behind him might catch up. And when they caught up with him, this time everything would be finished. Ram's sad, painful yell, and the malice and hatred it contained, still rang in his ears.
I can't go back. Now that he'd run, Ram and Roswaal would not spare him. Surely Emilia and Puck could no longer trust him for keeping his mouth shut. Beyond that, he'd abandoned Beatrice despite forming a pact with her. She would not be his ally any longer. I can't help it. I can't. I want to, but I can't.
He didn't know how it had come to this. He didn't know what he'd done wrong. Subaru didn't know what he might do so that the world would forgive him. After it was so much fun, suddenly greeted by another world, he'd had no choice but to live within it. For Subaru, surrounded by a vast desert of anxiety, the manor that had welcomed Subaru had been his oasis. Those beloved days, that beloved time which didn't amount to a single week, seemed so far from Subaru in that moment. He'd redone, he'd retatev.
Can't do it anymore. Suddenly, that was the murmur that arose in the back of his mind. There wasn't any point in trying anymore. Bewitched by his own voice pleading with him to give in, his pace relented. If he did as the word said, it really would be easier, he thought. Subaru, after all, was the type of person who looked for the easiest solution to any situation. It wasn't just Subaru. That's what people in general did. When faced with two unpalatable choices, they looked for a third way. Who could blame him for feeling like there was a third, heaven-sent option?
Blood suddenly drained from his head, making his heart beating so powerfully feel distant. His limbs grew heavy. He found himself dragging his feet as if they were rejecting him. It was right around when he stopped that he noticed the trees all around him. He was in the forest. Having rushed out of the mansion, he'd apparently gone off the road to the village, getting himself lost on a mountain path. The gloom from the sky being blocked off and the briars all around him made Subaru think it resembled where he died the third time around. The instant he recalled his own death, the third choice hit him in the face.
If I die, would it save him? Yeah, that's right. If I die, this'll change.
When he said it with his own lips, they formed a smile as if there could be no finer idea. He'd died 3 times. He'd arrived at the 4th world where he failed at anything and everything. This time he valued only his life. This time his life was the only thing he had left. What was the meaning of continuing to struggle and struggle if this was the result?
If you're gonna do it already. It doesn't matter what happens to me anymore.
Biting his lip, he aired his bitter hatred of the situation he'd become wrapped in. The blue sky unfolded before Subaru's eyes, reflecting his hate right back. And a cliff. Surely this was made to order by God himself. Answering that one prayer surely meant there was a heaven he should be grateful for, so that the foolish and pathetic Subaru Netsuki could find peace. The cliff seemed to invite him as he headed toward it, wobbling and dragging his feet. The wind was strong. Using the sleeve of his jacket to shield himself from the strong headwind, Subaru stood at the cliff's edge, peering into the blue sky beyond. Below him was a precipice with a face lined with sharp rocks, a drop dozens of meters onto a rocky place below. If he fell from this height, nothing would greet him but death. Subaru panted heavily as he looked down at the rocks below, able to acutely picture his own death. He heard the loud heartbeat he had forgotten once more. His lungs let out the air they'd been holding. His entire body was drenched with sweat, making Subaru feel cold as he closed his eyes.
If he kept his eyes closed and took one step forward, it'd all be over. Subaru wondered what would happen if he died this time. Would he return to the first day at the manor and begin the loop anew? He thought he wouldn't mind. If he did actually return to the first day, Emilia would be there, and so would Rem, everyone. Subaru would work as a servant, see everyone's faces, and die peacefully in his sleep on the fourth day. If he continued that over and over, at least Subaru would be immersed in a little day-to-day peace. It seemed like a good plan. If he could not hope for greater salvation, death wasn't so bad, he thought.
And yet, Subaru's body, standing atop the cliff, did not move forward. Only his knees moved to shake. He reached down to stop his knees from trembling, collapsing the moment his hips bent. Falling to his knees, it was as if he were prostrating himself before the sky. Subaru bit his lip at how pathetic he was.
Just one step, I can't even do. One simple thing. Perhaps he simply lacked the courage. Even under pursuit, he lost to his impulses, too indecisive to put it into action. His resolve and determination were so frail it was funny. Subaru could only remain on his knees and cry. He didn't know why he should live, yet he was too afraid of death to die. Subaru wailed, clawing at the ground at how truly pathetic and unsightly he was. He continued to weep and mourn his own wretchedness until his endurance finally gave out.
Subaru thought that the scene he saw while unconscious was a nightmare. He was in a well-lit room at a dining table with Emilia. Roswaal was in the seat of honor, with Beatrice there pouring black tea to Puck, his head diving into a plate right beside her. Emilia chided Puck for kidding around at the dining table, and Rem wove in and out, performing her duties, while Ram attended to Roswaal, ignoring all else. Subaru just laughed. The others laughed with him. And so, he saw a nightmare full of happiness and warmth. And Seal is a nightmare, full of happiness and warmth, has for real just laughed with it. Others laughed with him. It was a bitter dream, a dream that brought sadness and a sense of wrenching loss. His soul whittled down to the point of pain. Subaru's agony made him forget to breathe. Suddenly his face eased. He realized someone was holding his hand. The warmth conveyed to his palm seemed to push aside his negative emotions. Then, he saw a light. A white light. A dazzling light. A light that seemed to guide his consciousness back to...
Are you finally awake?
When Subaru opened his eyes, the orange sky of the setting sun was right in front of him. He realized, too, that he'd passed out on the ground lying face up. He recalled, too, what he'd been thinking about just before as if it had consumed his consciousness. Namely, that he had chickened out from suicide, wept shamelessly, and fell asleep from exhaustion. It was too shameful to be funny or pitiable. He'd acted like a baby. No, Subaru was far lower than a baby, for they had no capacity to sin.
Yes? Could you say something, I wonder?
Something. Something.
What an old rotten joke. You are quite something, joking with that glum face.
Beatrice spat out a bitter reply as she tossed aside the hand of Subaru she was touching. Beatrice was wearing the same dress as always, something that looked extremely out of place on top of the cliff. It was like a landscape painting where a lone little girl stood out.
No sane person goes hiking dressed like that.
I had no intention of hiking in rustic mountains to begin with. Perhaps you should not have fled to a place like this and cried yourself to sleep.
Beatrice was waving the sleeve of her dress, making her annoyed statement. When Subaru realized just what Beatrice was doing outside the manor to the point of showing up all the way over here.
Why?
Why? What? I wonder.
Why did you come?
While Beatrice had honored her pact to protect Subaru, he could tell her nothing. Seeing Subaru's words catching, Beatrice made a sour, exasperated face and snorted.
Dad. I made a pact to keep you safe. Having you toss yourself off a cliff to kill yourself would be an affront to my dignity.
Weren't you supposed to be my bodyguard only till this morning?
I do not recall saying anything about a time limit. You assumed incorrectly that there was one, I suppose.
Subaru groped through his memories while Beatrice, looking at him out of one eye, glanced away. Beatrice was using that contradiction between their assumptions about the details to continue her pact with Subaru. It suddenly struck Subaru how a girl with a viper's tongue and a foul-tempered horse's personality like Beatrice could show such deep compassion. Beatrice had not forsaken him. If that was true, then just maybe he didn't have to give up.
This is no time for vain hopes.
Beatrice shook her head, pouring cold water on Subaru's easy way out.
You cannot regain what you have lost. There is little more I can do for you. You can no longer explain things to the older sister. You threw away that chance.
I'd have told her if I could, he wanted to shout. Subaru would have confessed all and pled for forgiveness if his heart wouldn't have been crushed in the process. Not because it would help Ram, he knew it wouldn't. Simply for his own peace of mind.
At a time like this, am I an idiot? Yeah, I'm an idiot. Yeah, I'm an idiot.
Subaru had come this far by putting on a face, apologizing, pleading, protecting himself over and over, and now he'd been driven to the top of a cliff, physically and mentally, with nowhere to run. Run, and run. Some more was exactly how Subaru had arrived at this point.
If you know I can't go back, what do you plan on doing for me?
At the very least, I will have you die where I cannot see, so as not to disturb my dreams, I suppose. If you wish to flee, I shall take you beyond this domain.
Beatrice's kindness, wrapped in severity, cut deeply into his heart. Beatrice's expression was cold, her gaze acidic, as if beholding an annoyance. Even so, the kindness of the intent behind her words struck Subaru like none other. No doubt Beatrice spoke the truth. If he desired to flee, she would agree and aid him. He didn't know what waited for him after fleeing, but it couldn't get any worse than this. His own foolishness having wrecked his oasis. What was wrong with throwing away everything in Runningburg? And he say it's their experience to made the say it's their experience was. Blood trickled a little from the painful cut left on his cheek by the blade of wind. Touching the wound, Subaru realized too late that he'd felt its kind before. Subaru's very soul remembered its sharpness. When he had been fleeing from Rem in the mountains, a blade of wind had severed Subaru's right leg at the knee. As he touched the wound, Subaru's instincts told him it was the same magic.
The magic that gouged out my neck at the end, too, so they double-teamed me. His late understanding of how he had died deepened the silent despair in his heart. Even now, he could still hear Ram's hate-filled roar, her heart-rending wails from losing Rem. That was the moment. That was the point of no return. Subaru ought to have never fled the manor. Even if he didn't have the resolve to endure the pain, he should have faced Ram and spoken to her. He'd missed his chance, and now their hearts were separated forever. Having let it slip through his hands once, Subaru could never have it back. At least in that world.
With a low, gloomy voice, Beatrice interrupted his silent contemplation.
Oh. The older sister endured for the younger. The younger sister lived for the older. Neither could exist without the other. Neither could exist without the other.
Beatrice ran her fingers through her own ornate hair, not looking back at Subaru as she continued to speak.
Now that one half is lost, the whole can never return. Roswaal is unlikely to forgive it either.
What do you mean by that? What do you know?
He felt like she was avoiding something really important. Subaru urged Beatrice to share her true thoughts, but she moved her fingers from her hair to Subaru's sleeve, tugging and gently pulling him to the ground as she extended her foot. Subaru was in shock at how he seemed to flow right onto the ground. Beatrice tossed back her hair.
Does it truly matter to you, I wonder? These last 4 days you spent most of your time holed up in your room and had little contact with them. Would the older sister let you press her about these matters now? I think not. It has nothing to do with you.
It's not like...
Like I don't know anything about them, he would have said, but Subaru's words died on his tongue. His repeated loops had given him more than 2 weeks of time with them. Subaru could have responded that he'd forged memories with them during the time that this Beatrice knew nothing about, but he did not. For he suddenly realized something. Subaru realized it was possible he knew nothing of Ram and Rem, not their true faces, their feelings, or the bond between them. Just as Beatrice had stated,
Subaru wondered what he really had learned about them during those first 3 lives. What was the point of Subaru feeling such loss and despair when he didn't truly know anything about them? Was it all really just a bad dream? What was it that Subaru could draw on to refute Beatrice, who looked sternly down at Subaru at that very moment? Or did Subaru not know anything, not a single thing, about the two of them? Even though he'd thought of them as precious people he wanted to protect.
So in the end, I got worked up and pathetic all on my own, not knowing, not understanding anything?
It has nothing to do with you. Subaru knew nothing. He'd beaten away all his chances. He had nothing left but the skin on his back. Within the darkness covering his eyes, the memories of the days he'd spent at the manor broke apart, one by one, into dust. Subaru's heart, too, shattered. Lying on his back, Subaru put his palms to his face and wailed at his own powerlessness.
Had it all been a utopia beyond his reach from the beginning? Was everything Subaru had seen simply a dream, the time he'd spent there a mere illusion?
Subaru looked like he was about to break out in tears when Beatrice called to him.
How long are you gonna stay like that, I wonder? Stand before she finds you.
Impatient from Subaru still not moving, she roughly grabbed the palms covering his face and yanked him up. As his field of vision opened, the lightweight girl used her entire weight to haul Subaru to his feet. The sensation conveyed by her palms took away his thoughts. Ignoring Beatrice's intent in rousing Subaru so insistently, he felt her palms weighing how they felt.
Doc. Hey? What do you think you? Why so interested in my palms, I wonder?
I've felt these hands before, just like this. Earlier, did you?
I shall regret it for the rest of my days. Perhaps you were simply too wretched as you slept like that.
Abruptly, Beatrice looked away, giving him only her cheek. Subaru flexed his hands several times, reflecting on the warm, peaceful sensation he'd felt from them while he slept. While Subaru had his nightmare, a dream with an agonizing sense of despair and loss, over and over again. That hadn't been the only time he'd felt warmth when in pain. It had happened before.
Back then, someone held both my hands.
Beatrice suspiciously raised an eyebrow. Subaru brought not only his right hand before him but his left as well. It was difficult for one person to hold both hands of someone who was asleep. He doubted a single person could lie on a bed alongside another and hold both hands without difficulty. So why did he feel like both his hands had been held? The reason was simple.
Ram.
Both had held Subaru's hands while he slept. It had been here on the fourth loop before anything had happened at Roswaal Manor. Seeing Subaru suffer as he slept, both of them had taken pity on him and given him some small measure of compassion. "I will kill you," the hate-filled voice had cried out, her rage pounding into him like a curse. The cruel words had scarred his heart, but more than that, "Can't you make the crying stop?" It was Ram's sad cry of despair at having her other half ripped from her that never left his ears. Some corner of Subaru's heart, which should have been shattered already, cried out.
By nature, Subaru was the sort to pick the path of least resistance. He didn't want to feel pain, suffering, despair. Just the thought of living with such burdens made him want to run. What stupid things am I thinking here?
For he thought he didn't want to run anymore. He wanted to do something.
I lived this time and everything.
His shameless plea to Beatrice had allowed him to reach the fifth day with ease. It was the thought of what had greeted him that very day that settled Subaru's decision.
That's right, my life's mine. That's why
What was wrong with fighting for an easier, more enjoyable life?
I'll decide how to use it.
The moment Subaru said it, he crossed a line inside. There was no going back. Beatrice furrowed her brows at Subaru's words. However, before he could ask her why she was doing that, her eyes looked toward the forest, full of caution.
You dithered too much. You dithered too much.
Beatrice's regret-tinged words came as the rustle of the wind through the forest trees deepened, mixed with the sounds of the swaying leaves. The sound of footsteps reached Subaru's ears, too. He turned around. A girl with pink hair stood before him. Ram, the forest at her back, glared at Subaru.
I finally found you. You will go no farther.
Pain swept over Subaru's heart as he beheld the look on Ram's face, thick with hatred. As she stood there, Ram had none of her usual meticulous look. Branches had torn and punctured her skirt. There was no sign of the headdress normally on her head. Her pink hair, buffered by the wind, had lost its usual beauty. The sisters dressed each other and did each other's hair. Subaru knew this. He remembered that they'd had told him at some point. He knew several other secrets between the two sisters.
Would you relent, I wonder? So long as the pact is active, I cannot hold back against anyone. Lady Beatrice, it is you who should stand aside. I cannot hold back against you either. A joke. I suppose did I hear you say to hold back in regards to me? Perhaps you have forgotten you are not in the mansion, Lady Beatrice. Do you truly believe you can protect that man away from the archive, here in the forest?
Subaru held his silence as the two girls continued to square off before him. Beatrice's words of regret proved that Ram's words were no empty boast. Beatrice's strength came with limitations, and this situation was beyond them. Even so, Beatrice stubbornly refused to move, upholding her pact in front of Subaru. From behind, Subaru reached out toward Beatrice. Then,
Boing.
he grabbed hold of the girl's two ornate hair rolls and pulled on them hard. He let go. The large amount of hair bounced quite generously. Bouncy, bouncy.
That felt pretty good.
Well? Oh! You...
Her eyes wide open, her tongue quivering, Beatrice turned around, all flustered. Subaru inclined his head slightly as he looked at her.
Us? What are you doing, I wonder? You have a death wish, I suppose.
Don't be silly. I don't want to die. One tiny bit. When you die, it should be one time to end your life for good. I truly believe that. Now.
As he spoke, he patted Beatrice on the shoulder and calmly walked past her. Straight ahead, Ram glared at Subaru's face with astonishment. As Subaru walked before her, she heightened her guard, exhaling from pursed lips.
Quite some nerve. Finally resigned to your fate?
Not exactly. More like, I decided to do something.
Not understanding Subaru's intent, Ram scowled.
What?
Sorry. Because I was sloppy, I brought you girls so much sadness.
So you did do something to Rem?
No. Sorry, but I honestly don't know. There's so much I don't know, but
Subaru's words trailed off as he took a moment to breathe.
there's so much I don't know, but I think I know one thing now.
What's the point?
Ram shouted back, unable to accept Subaru's display of resolve as anything but childish games. Ram swung out a foot, kicking the earth like she was stamping her feet.
Rem's already dead. There's no taking that back. What good is it that you know something now?
I'm not gonna say I can do anything. It's because I couldn't do anything that things ended up like this. I know more than anyone that's not gonna convince anyone.
He wasn't being defiant. Even now, regret deeply pierced his heart. He hated himself for his own stupidity and weakness. If you could die from shame, he might have been dead already. Still, his shameful behavior, his shameful living, his pathetic helplessness, these had brought him to this place, and, thus, to his conclusion.
And what is it you know about Rem and me?
I don't know any of the important stuff between you, but
Subaru had spent almost 20 days together with them. They didn't know that, and he was unable to tell them. But Subaru remembered. Even if they had forgotten, Subaru's soul remembered. He'd seen them, laughed with them, spent time with them. The worlds Subaru had walked with Ram and Rem, those worlds really had existed. Which was why
there's no way you girls knew this, but
What?
I love both of you.
the blunt, worrywart big sister, the sarcastic, superficially polite little sister. Subaru thought fondly of the days he had spent with both girls. They were precious memories to him, even though they had killed him more than once. Enough that, if he had the choice to spend time with them once more, that was a choice he would make. Subaru's shout made Ram open her eyes wide, freezing in shock. Of course it did. From Ram's point of view, Subaru's declaration was meaningless, empty nonsense. Furthermore, he'd already abandoned them an instant. And so furthermore, Ram's thought process froze for only a moment. In the next instant, her body thawed and leapt into action. But a momentary opening was an opening nonetheless. Subaru's sprint was just a moment faster than Ram's switch to anger-filled attacking. Turning his back to Ram, Subaru rushed past Beatrice, his body moving like the wind, making a beeline toward the cliff.
Wait!
Behind him, a girl's high-pitched wail reached out. Subaru's mind never caught up to which girl's voice it was. He meant to be determined, but now his thought process was in tatters, like someone had clawed it apart. His heart beat hard, but his body creaked all over, as if to betray his mind. His limbs felt like leaden weights. He was running with all his might, but the world seemed to move in slow motion. It was as if Subaru's mind were putting off the results of his change of heart as long as it possibly could.
So stupid. He was conflicted even then. He knew why. He'd tenaciously clung to living without shame to that point. Even when he wanted to die, he'd chickened out in the end, able only to fall to his knees. But Subaru could do it now. It's rude to Beatrice, huh?
With those words, Subaru voiced his final regret and left everything behind. He raced to the cliff. A few steps more. He was too scared to count them. Pathetic. Insane. He had the urge to laugh. But he didn't laugh. He couldn't laugh. All that he was leaving behind was a life of living death. To Subaru, giving up on a future in that place meant he'd already died inside. If he could live as a dead man walking, he could do something with that life. And that decision, to do something instead of doing nothing, was one only Subaru could make it steadier.
I'm the only one who can do it.
His feet left the ground. He clawed at the air. He could touch nothing. He could reach nothing. So fast. The wind was strong. His eyes hurt. His head hurt. The ringing in his ears was distant. He felt like he'd left behind his beating heart. He couldn't hear the ringing. The ringing inside his skull was like a broken record. If it ended with his death, that was that. But if only he could go back, then. For she had cried out, "I'll kill you."
I'll save you, I swear.
The moment after he voiced his determination, his head smashed into the hard ground. The hate-filled voice could not chase him any longer. Nothing could, not anymore. All that was there was nothingness. Absent-mindedly, he looked around the nothingness of his mind. Perhaps looked around was not the proper phrase. Eyes did not exist within his mind, nor did hands, nor feet, nor any pieces of his body. All that remained was his incorporeal, floating mind. Knowing nothing, aware of nothing, he looked about. Darkness. A room with nothing. A room that was a world without a floor or a ceiling, covered in pitch blackness so great that it defied thought. Suddenly, in the world of everlasting darkness, there was meaning. A silhouette abruptly emerged in front of his mind. The contours of the silhouette were slender and as pitch black as the rest, the upper body more of a fog, rejecting his mind's recognition. With the emergence of the human shape, the mind gained its first strong desire. He felt a breach in the cold as the shadow gently moved as if to convey something to his mind. He didn't understand. He was aware of nothing. But for some reason his mind could not avert itself. From the shadow gently, his mind could not avert itself.
I cannot meet you. Not yet.
With that faint whisper, the dark world abruptly vanished, and in so doing, the shadow and his mind went with it.